Are you guys ready for some more dating simulator games? Well, guess what? I fucking am. Hello everybody, my name is Xaphan, and welcome to a game called Love, Money, Rock and Roll. And this is another game by Soviet Games, the one that made Everlasting Summer, which was a fucking brilliant masterpiece. And I can probably, I can certainly say that this is probably going to be a masterpiece as well. So I can't wait for it. Let's just get into it. Play the game. See how we go. 3rd of the 4th, 1987, or 4th of the 3rd. You know, I don't know how they do their dates. Or is that just, do I have to select that? Oh no. No, I don't. It was just a thing. Oh, pretty. Very pretty. These falling cherry petals. I'm probably gonna do the Semyon voice for this one as well, because that's the main voice that I've got. Does anyone actually find them beautiful? Does anyone really see a deep meaning in their whirling? Perhaps this combination of colors, a purple velvet against the setting sun, does mesmerize. No doubt back then, I also watched this leaf fall and thought so. Perhaps too much time has passed, I've forgotten, and I have changed. Only the trees are still the same. They don't care. They came into the world before me, and they will yet outlive my descendants. They don't care how beautiful their falling petals are, how fast they fell or at what angle. It's all the same to them. Why would they bother with such minutiae? To them, this is nothing more than a routine change of the seasons. To me, though, this is a flood of memories. Shit, I'm 14 and this is deep! The tree in front of me now is just like the one that on that day. The day when I had something. The day when it was too late to do anything. It's the same. The same are the petals, too, falling with treacherous indifference. They genuinely don't care. They don't care if one day a photographer makes an entire exhibition of their images, or if a pair of sweethearts falls even more deeply in love, enchanted by their ceaseless dance. That's how nature is. It's not how I am. Same as that day a year earlier. That day the petals were falling off the trees as well. Back then too, nature was lying down, not dying, no, but falling asleep, to wake up again in the spring. The fire of life rekindled. Sitting under this tree, I was remembering all the joy and all the sadness, and this has some pretty impressive bass. The girl.
Do you really love me?
Yes.
Truly?
Yes. She turned away while the petals kept falling, getting tangled in her hair and making her look even more beautiful. You know, these cherry petals really suit you. She turned around. She probably didn't feel like it. She probably expected something else. Elegant phrases, wise words, something, but not this.
Really?
Yes, of course, she smiled. I too must have expected something different, feelings, confessions, as beautiful as the fluttering petals. But at that time, those words were more important to me than anything else. More important than the tree, more important than the moment, more important than life itself. Because I realized that they were like a petal resting in my hand, before it fell to the ground, so near, so fragile, so precious. Yeah, I'm already getting into this. I mean, I'm kind of hoping it has sort of a horror aspect, just like Everlasting Summer, but at the same time I hope it doesn't and it just falls into the sort of romance sort of side of things. Oh, there's animations. I snapped awake. The fan was humming obnoxiously as ever. Its noise must have woken me up. I was sick of it, of course, but it was a necessary evil. The summer heat was relentless, even with the doors open. It was 3 in the morning, and the silence was sickening. Dear God, better to hear the blare of the police sirens or the shouting of a drunken neighbor or the screeching of car tires. Anything but this obnoxious fan. I would have turned it off long ago, but then I might have indeed been cooked alive by the heat. Ha! Russian winters had nothing on Japanese summers. Oh, look, another fan. With effort, I got up and went to the kitchen for some water. What were Russian winters like anyway? Some muffled creaking came from the floorboards under my feet. But the rest of the house, which had 3 bedrooms, a living room, a bathroom, and some pantries, paid no attention to its sole inhabitant. Dang. It really was 3 a.m. I gulped the water down greedily, spilling half on myself. In the morning, I had to go to school. Had to? Who's compelling me? Maybe I was the one who came up with these stupid duties and responsibilities, straddling myself with the necessity of socializing and waiting for that useless piece of paper, which would attest to me possessing a high school education. I must have invented this world myself. Like Semyon! Kind of, in a way. Not really. I must have made it up alongside all the other worlds that I fabricated daily for myself, for those I knew, for the whole world. These obligations were nothing but the stupid conventions of that world. By a stroke of bad luck, it was also the world that most people viewed as the real one. I poured myself another glass of water and returned to the bed. The moon shone brightly, animating every speck of dust. In its mournful light, my room looked entirely different, like a portal to another world. A world that was beyond even my imagination. A silver ray lighted on the table, inching towards a heap of papers. School papers, an unfinished novel, letters from my mother, from friends in Mother Russia. And I got up and put a particular scrap of paper into the drawer. Had it been sitting there for a year? Or why should it have bothered me? Then again, why is it on my table? I should have tossed it long ago. I jumped up, took a step towards the table, and came to a halt. How could I? It's not as if I haven't tried before. More than once. The phone rang loudly. Very loudly. It was 3 in the morning. Who could possibly need to talk to me at this hour? To a dejected high schooler sunk in contemplation? However, I was used to it. Hello?
Hi. You're not asleep?
As you can see, I felt an impulse to hang up and disconnect the phone. But even more, I wish that she could now be here, close by.
How come?
How should I know? Probably because you called me. Yeah, so I'm probably going to be doing a lot of the same voices because they're kind of the ones that I can do. I mean, your voice box has limited range, man. I mean, even I'm stretching it with the high-pitched voices. How should I know? Probably because you called me. She mumbled something unintelligible.
How are things in general?
How should they be in general at 3 in the morning?
I don't know. Great?
Well then, they're great.
Oh, stop that!
Well, what did you want to hear?
I just wanted to call.
So you mean it's okay to call at 3 a.m.?
I saw the light come on in your kitchen, so I figured you were up.
Are you spying on me?
No, I was just...
The line went silent for a few seconds. She must have been trying to think of something that wouldn't sound too ridiculous.
It's just that I couldn't sleep either.
Why either? What if I had been sleeping?
But you aren't now.
Okay, let's start from the beginning. What did you want?
I wanted to know.
She paused mid-sentence, as if working up the courage before continuing more confidently.
Are you coming to school tomorrow?
I suppose I do.
Then I'll come by for you in the morning.
Now that's just great. It's 3 in the morning, and you're going to come by when? In 3 hours?
So we won't be late.
You know what? I think I'm going to pass on that. Don't be a dick. Come on, man. She clearly likes you, man.
Hey, you can't keep missing school. At that rate, you won't be able to graduate. And then you won't be able to find a good job. And then...
She got entirely tangled up in the predictions of my future. Oh well, no biggie.
No, that's not well. Leave the door unlocked tomorrow in the morning.
You have the keys. What does it matter if I lock the door?
All right. See you in the morning then.
See you. I didn't feel like arguing. It would have done no good anyway. She would come and wake me up regardless. It's what she did almost every day. Why did I ever give her the keys? Well, that was a while back. It must have been about a year. The cherry petals were probably falling on that day as well. But to hell with them! I thought to set the alarm so I could get up before she came. Not that it mattered much, but it was getting old. What's more, I worried that I may have become too accustomed to it, seeing that familiar face every morning. Dependent even, which was something I definitely could not allow to happen. So if she wanted to come in the morning, fine. But she wouldn't be waking me up again. What are you trying to pull, buddy? So he said, I'm starting to get the same sort of vibes. He sounds like kind of a bit of a depressed person, just like Semyon. I know, I'm gonna be comparing this a lot to Everlasting Summer, only because it's made by the same creators. Oh my god. 100 bells were chiming with 100 melodies in my head, announcing the morning. Thank God it's over. Yeah, so I'm gonna be, comparing this a lot, probably, like, yeah, unconsciously comparing this a lot to Everlasting Summer in terms of weird things that's happening. But right now I'm already seeing a similarity between this character and Semyon, which he seems depressed and doesn't want anything to do with anyone. I could be wrong. He could have just been tired because it's 3 o'clock in the morning and a bit arsey because, you know, it's 3 o'clock in the fucking morning. That's when I go to sleep. In that medley was the cheerful chirping of the birds, the construction of the neighboring street, the boisterous shouts of the street vendors, as well as that damned fan, which could not stop humming for a second, and the grumpy mutterings somewhere close by. Oh, hello. Oh, you have animation. The fixed gaze of large green eyes, the pouting lips, and the 2 red braids all informed me that I had slept in. What time is it? The girl picked up the alarm and shoved it in my face. But it's still early, I protested.
The early bird gets the worm.
This was Himitsu. I seemed to have known her my whole life, or at least since my parents and I had moved to Japan. Her mother was Russian, although she divorced Himitsu's father when we were still children.
Okay, enough lounging around. Time to get up, wash up, eat breakfast, and go to school.
This was how most of my days started, though after so many years, I'd become accustomed to it. Incidentally, I'd forgotten to introduce myself. Nikolai, a high school senior. Okay, so my name is Nikolai.
Nico-kun!
You know I'm gonna be mocking that. I mean, come on, man. It's really weird that a 21-year-old bearded, long-haired Australian boy with swell muscles is gonna be going, Coon! By the way, that word means a very different thing in Australia. It's a very big insult. Himitsu's voice carried throughout the entire house, and it no longer felt so empty and lonely. I quickly got washed and dressed, then came into the kitchen. The house really was too big for one person. In fact, it was probably designed for a multi-generational family, grandparents, parents, children, grandchildren. The empty space seemed oppressive, even when my parents were still with me. Now it felt just like a museum or a library. Who in their right mind would want to live there, especially by themselves.
Bon appetit!
An omelet and several kinds of salads were gracing the table. Salad is disgusting! Salad is gross! Salad should not exist! But I'm liking this 1980s music. I picked up a piece of a cucumber with my chopsticks and was lazily shifting it around the plate.
Not hungry?
I am, but I can't live off grass like a rabbit. Himitsu frowned.
So, is instant ramen better in your book?
I don't know about better, but it's undoubtedly better tasting.
Hey!
She puffed out her cheeks comically, which made her look like a cute hamster.
I put work into it, you know.
KO. Knockout. I could say nothing to counter that. I was concentrated on chewing.
What are you planning to do after school today?
I don't know. Kyusuke wanted to go to the movies, I think. Were you going to suggest something? She set aside her chopsticks and looked at me intently like she was going to say something important.
Maybe.
She started laughing, trying to hide her embarrassment.
Never mind, it's not important.
Himitsu was in love with me. I'd known this for a long time, but did nothing about it. At some point, I'd grown so accustomed to it that I no longer knew if she loved me as a brother or as a man. To be perfectly honest, I didn't care one way or another. If you want to go somewhere, I can reschedule the movie. It can do without me tonight. Her face gleamed with an earnest smile.
Well, actually, I wanted to check out this one store near the station. It's just open. The girls at school won't stop talking about it.
Someone else might have considered this a date, but I simply enjoyed spending time with Himitsu. She also seemed content with this arrangement.
You haven't finished your breakfast!
Nor did I plan to. I might yet have to eat this grass for lunch as well. Why don't you ever make borscht or dumplings or something?
Borscht isn't breakfast, and besides, I've made it before.
Himitsu took offense. She had made it before, true, just not the same as I remembered from my childhood. I was not about to tell her that. It's one thing not to know how to do something. One can always learn. It's quite another to both know and do, yet fail to meet expectations. When that is the case, there is a good chance that one will never learn. You're right, sorry. Your borscht is delicious. Borscht. Yeah, borscht. I repeated. Himitsu was glaring at me. Anyone else in her place would have long since emptied this bowl of imaginary borscht onto my head. So, what's this store you were talking about?
They sell clothes.
She kept piercing me with a stare.
Dresses, sweaters, skirts, clothing, women's clothing.
Do you think maybe you should go with one of your girlfriends then? I'm not saying no, it just might be a bit awkward. Maybe.
Why?
I don't know, it's just the way things are here, and you know how I'm not always great with the local customs? I was telling the truth. Anyone else would have gotten used to the Japanese way of life, to Japanese traditions and cultural norms. Or at least to the ways of the local high schoolers.
No one is gonna think anything. It's not like we are...
Himitsu was now completely flustered, which was making her upset. I couldn't tell if she was more upset with herself or with me. Sometimes when I talked to Himitsu, and not only her, I would hit a dead end. I no longer knew that I was expected of me. While the other person couldn't understand why I didn't get it. In the end, the entire meaning of the conversation would end up buried under an avalanche of misunderstanding, which snowballed with every new remark. At such times, it was better to agree or to remain silent. Alright, it's okay. No one's gonna think anything. Why would they?
Exactly,
Said Himitsu triumphantly and went to wash the dishes. Oh, pretty house. Oh, that is a fucking pretty house, actually. Grandma's summer is the Russian equivalent to Indian summer. What was this kind of weather? Early in the fall, cold in Russia? A grandma's summer? In Japan, at any rate, it was still scorching at the beginning of September. Himitsu was walking alongside me, smiling. I occasionally glanced over at her, trying to figure out what was on her mind. Not that I was particularly interested, more likely, I was just trying to distract myself from my own thoughts. The image of the falling cherry petals kept surfacing in my mind, dragging up painful memories. As for Himitsu, she never broached the subject. Was she reluctant to avoid reopening the wound, or was she just showing tact?
Hey, Earth to Nico-kun! Do you copy?
Huh? What? I was clearly daydreaming.
We're almost here, and you're still sleeping?
Himitsu scowled. As always, her displeasure looked more comical than intimidating. I'm not sleeping, I'm solving the world's problems in my head.
Oh, yeah, what sort of problems?
She laughed. The political sort? Not even geopolitical. Who else would solve them if not yours truly?
Your grades are a little underwhelming for a future politician.
That's not important. There've been plenty of great people who didn't get the best grades in school. Take Einstein, for instance.
I see.
Himitsu smirked. We would have probably kept chit-chatting like this if it hadn't been for a scuffle happening that moment at the school gate. Oh, we're already getting into it! Several people had surrounded a girl from a distance. We couldn't see who it was.
Look!
Himitsu said quietly, slowing down. I started listening. She probably wears the same skirt all year.
Must be a hand-me-down from her older sister.
How does a bum like her even get admitted to our school? It's not a halfway house. Go work at the fish market.
Be careful now, you might catch something from her.
It's not like I was going to, with her.
Hey, you're onto something. I bet that's how she spends her nights, earning a little side cash. Poor thing.
Himitsu paused for a second.
Isn't she in your class?
I looked more closely. She did look familiar. I think so.
Are you saying you don't even know who your classmates are?
Of course I do. That's Nakahira Iwamura. I fixed my hair and looked triumphantly at Himitsu. She was not impressed. In fact, she's our class president. Himitsu's still looking at me reproachfully. Well, what? I've never spoken much with her, and anyway, we've only been together in the same class since the start of the school year, so it's only been 6 months. Meanwhile, the scuffle, if one could call it that, was picking up steam. The girl remained stubbornly silent, only dropping her head lower with every minute. This only encouraged the bullies further. Come on! Who would pay money for someone like her? Except maybe a couple hundred yen. The speaker made a show of opening his wallet, stuffed with bills, pulling out a handful and waving them in front of Iwamura. That's really getting out of hand. Is it Iwamura or Iwamura? I think it might be Iwamura. That's really getting out of hand, I muttered under my breath. However, the other students walking past pretended not to notice anything. These damn traditions again, this isn't right!
Nico-kun, don't. Let's just tell the teacher.
Himitsu tugged lightly on my sleeve. What is the teacher gonna do, scold them? My, aren't you ashamed of yourselves? I was starting to get worked up. If I had to think about it, what business of mine was this? A fellow classmate? So what? I hadn't exchanged more than a couple words with her before this day. On the other hand, it was hard to watch one poor girl getting hounded by an entire pack. I'm gonna fucking intervene! This isn't right, yo. Why should I stay on the sidelines? What if this were Himitsu in her place? After all, we're also far from the wealthiest kids at the school. Sorry. Himitsu only smiled slightly in response. Am I gonna knock some bastards out? Hey! I yelled and headed confidently in their direction. Leave her alone! At first they just looked at me in surprise. Iwamura, on the other hand, kept staring at the ground and did not react at all. And who would you be? What business of yours is it? Keep walking! Their tone was challenging, but this only boosted my confidence. 4 against 1. Don't you think that's a bit unfair? You want some too, is that it? Oh yeah, we got a scuffle. This is great. I'm liking this. I'm getting worked up. These two guys from the group stepped forward, cracking their knuckles for emphasis. It would seem that they could do more than talk trash. And what's the hero gonna do now? One of them smirked. Yeah, what? To tell the truth, I didn't know either. I've been compelled to stand up for Iwamura by some kind of inflamed sense of justice, no more. Because here, you weren't supposed to act this way, and there, you were supposed to help your neighbor. But real life isn't manga or anime. In real life, I had no superpowers. You're about to find out. I went up really close to one of them and froze. What now? But the guy staggered back, clearly rattled. Who do you think you are? The same instant, the second guy rushed up to me, clearly intending to shove me in the chest. My reflexes kicked in before I could think. Oh, I totally beat the fucking shit out of him. Oh, yes! I swung out my arm. Crack came the sound of the assailant's jaw. The world around me seemed to freeze. Iwamura, the other girls, and even the guy whom I just punched were all staring at me, seemingly transfixed with surprise. But this only lasted an instant. Do you have any idea who my father is? One of the girls was shouting. Don't yell, let's just go. He's some kind of psycho. The other girl was trying to calm her friend down. I'm trying to do voices, but I don't know if they're like the girls' voices until after. The second guy helped his splayed pal up from the ground. This isn't over. We'll remember you. These words, they quickly headed away from the school. Himitsu rushed over to me in the same instant.
Nico-kun, are you alright?
Yeah, of course. I replied calmly while examining my slightly swollen fist. Surprisingly, I wasn't shaking with adrenaline as might have been expected. Everything must have happened too suddenly.
Iwamura, senpai?
In all the commotion, I had forgotten all about the chief culprit of this kerfuffle. She stood silently, peering angrily at us under her brows. Are you alright? Fighting is prohibited on the school grounds, she said quietly. I'm gonna give her that voice. Maybe. I might change it later. You know, when the... if I didn't mention before, this is a demo. So, when the actual game comes out, I might change her voice, but for now it's that one, she said quietly. What? A foolish smile spread across my face. I looked over at Himitsu. She looked just as confused as I was. I'm saying that there was no call for getting into a fight. In case you haven't noticed, I was kind of defending you. They would have left in the end. And Iwamura went silent for a second, then looked up at me. Her eyes flashed, but just as quickly her indifferent demeanor returned. They always leave. Regardless, you could at least say thank you. It's just common courtesy. I was even more upset now than a minute earlier. And not only here, but in the whole wide world. Iwamura merely raised her chin, snorted, and quickly made her way towards the school gate. That's just unreal.
I told you not to get involved,
Himitsu said quietly.
But you did act like a real hero.
Some hero, uh-huh. Where have you seen heroes like this? In the movies, the heroes get thanked for the rescue.
But you didn't do it for the sake of gratitude, did you?
Himitsu kept smiling, which made me flustered and blush. We'll see what sort of gratitude awaits me from the teachers. I grumbled. Grumble, grumble. Now come on, let's go. Another routine school day had now begun. I couldn't remember the Russian school at all, even though I attended it for the entire 6 months. But for some reason, it seemed to me that schools were more or less the same everywhere in the world, as were people. Really, how many ways could there be to get stuffed into a kid's noggin? if Marconi and Popov could, independently of each other, invent the radio, why couldn't identical best practices emerge in education at the opposite ends of the earth? A shout from the teacher snapped me out of these thoughts. Whatever school was like in Russia, the school here was pretty strict. There was a reason after all. I don't know, like, this is just me thinking in general, but I think school in Russia and school in Japan might be, like, what the fuck do I know? I'm just spouting off bullshit right here. But I think, like, school in Russia and school in Japan might be, like, the same amount of strictness, I don't know. Because school in Australia, it's hilarious. Like, quite often you get the shit teachers, you get good teachers, and then you get, like, poor, sad teachers. And sometimes to the shit teachers, you could just say fuck off, and they'd just shut up. Yeah, that's true. You could do that. I mean, I'm not condoning it, but you could do that with teachers in Australia. They just shut up if you say fuck off. It's hilarious. I haven't done it myself. Other people have, when I went to school. There was a reason, after all, why this one was one of the best schools in the country. My class consisted mainly of the children of the rich and famous, businessmen, politicians, showbiz stars. Sometimes I felt out of place here. But then, even among this elite, some people were almost ordinary. One such person, Kyosuke, came up to me during the break. I'd known Kyosuke since middle school. He came across as a down-to-earth guy with none of the attitudes of the local privileged youth. He's gonna have the bra voice.
Hey, Nick, brah. Did you hear what happened this morning, brah?
Yep, you guys are gonna be hearing that voice again. Electronic is back in the form of Kyosuke. I looked around the classroom and spotted one of the girls that had been harassing Iwamura. She gave me a mean look, but then quietly went back to what she'd been doing. Whatever. No, what happened? I asked, even though I knew perfectly well what Kyosuke was referring to. This morning at the school gate, brah. Kyosuke lowered his voice. There was a brawl, brah. There was a brawl. Some word they chose. Couldn't they have thought of a better one? I did more than just witness it. What are you saying, brah? You mean... His eyes lit up, he leaned in towards me and then continued at rapid-fire rate. Are you that guy, bro? The one that punched Kurosaki from the Class B? Somehow, I didn't care to ask his name. I answered proudly, and immediately winced. There was nothing to be proud of here. Now everyone was going to gossip about what a dangerous bully I was, and no one was going to remember that I had actually saved a poor girl from harassment. Don't think anything terrible, I was just defending. My eyes were scouring the classroom in search of Iwamura. Was defending, but she wasn't there. Was I really looking to her for proof of my heroic deed, for a confirmation that I was not merely a troublemaker? Well, anyway, I was defending a girl. A girl, brah? Who? Kyosuke squinted. I don't know who she is. Anyway, what difference does it make? It was a natural reaction, you know, anyone in my place. I looked up at Kyosuke. Any decent person would have done the same. Uh-huh, yeah, sure, brah. Don't forget to introduce me to this mysterious girl of yours, brah. He seemed to want to add something, but at that moment, the school bell rang. He didn't need to know what the girl was, that the girl was Iwamura. She had it pretty rough as it was. Then again, maybe part of the blame lay with her. The next lesson was contemporary Japanese. I'd lived in Japan for 10 years and spoke the language fluently, of course, but writing still gave me grief at times. When the break started, I rushed out of the classroom to avoid further conversation about the morning incident. Kyosuke could be somewhat pushy and persistent, but he did not entirely lack tact, so I was probably being overly cautious. English was next, and came much more easily to me. I spent the better part of the lesson gazing out of the sports ground where a soccer match was taking place. Soon, my thoughts took me far from school to the day when the cherry petals were falling. Fall was here, and that means that the trees would soon be shedding their foliage again. The color palette might be different this time, but would my feelings remain the same? A couple more weeks, a month at most, and I would know. The bell recalled me to reality and my stomach started grumbling noisily. Have you not eaten breakfast today, brah? Let's make a cafeteria run, brah. You're always ready to chow down now, aren't you? Where there's a whole body, there's a whole mind, brah. A whole lot of body, more like it. I was, however, starving, and I didn't want to wait till lunch. Okay, let's go. I'm hungry. The memory of Himitsu's healthy, balanced breakfast was still fresh in my mind. I wanted to eat something unhealthy, but delicious. Sadly, food poisoning was not on the menu. The cafeteria, like everything else at this school, was first rate. I couldn't tell if the food here was on par with the fare served at the world's top restaurants, as I had eaten there, but on the whole, I had no complaints. Besides, the menu had many European options. No borscht was among them, of course. We entered the cafeteria. Kyosuke was babbling on about some new magical girl anime. I wouldn't have called myself a huge anime fan, but I watched them sometimes too. Though, on the scale of enthusiasm, I was as far from Kyosuke as Tokyo was from Moscow. Oh, someone bumped into me. Suddenly, BAM! Something had jabbed me inside. Not too hard, but enough to be felt. On top of that, I was now covered in liquid. Oh, it's another girl. A girl holding a tray popped up from behind. I was dripping with orange juice, while she gazed in bewilderment on the result of her actions. Hey, careful! I was more frustrated than angry. She did not react in any way, instead she just kept looking at me in surprise. Finally, she seemed to recover.
It's you who should watch where you go!
What? I was taken aback. I smiled like an idiot and even retreated a step. Meanwhile, the girls scowled and glared at me.
I said, watch where you go, instead of sleepwalking.
You were actually the one who bumped into me.
And why would I bump into you?
I was lost for an answer. Maybe I should have given that voice to Alyssa so I wasn't so confused between Alyssa and Oyana's voice. Oh! God. The girl was talking nonsense, but she was doing it so confidently that I couldn't help but question my own judgment. And why would I?
How should I know? You're the one who bumped into me.
Alright, you convinced me. I won't do it again. I snapped back and was prepared to leave.
Wait,
she said quietly.
You're, well, all wet.
I looked myself over, not the prettiest of pictures to be sure. What do you suggest? A joint trip to the shower? Oh, smooth!
Me? I was not! How could I even think such?
The surprise and confusion on her face gave place to anger. There was an insulted and humiliated victim, and I, the culprit, naturally. Okay, just forget it. Everything's fine.
Wait.
Her tone kept changing faster than the weather in the tropics.
Here, take this.
She handed me a handkerchief. I accepted it without an argument and was about to thank her. However, she snorted, turned on her heels, and left to join her girlfriends at the far end of the cafeteria. What a strange girl. Nick, you brah, started Kyosuke when I sat down at our table. He was flaring his nostrils and gasping like a fish out of water. Do you know who that was, brah? No. Who? That was Eli-sama, brah. Sama is a Japanese honorific used when addressing someone with the most possible respect and revere. Its approximate analog in English would be Sir, Madame. He looked probingly at me as though expecting me to exclaim, Oh, Eli-sama, brah. That very one? Sama who? I inquired coolly. How can you not know, brah? And you want people to believe you're a student here, brah? I don't want that. It's what the papers say. If only you paid more attention to what goes on around you, brah. Alright, enough suspense already, just tell me. He was clearly chomping at the bit. Kyusuke, repositioned himself more comfortably on his chair, assumed a serious look, and began. Ellie-sama, brah, she's like the school queen, brah. She has perfect grades, she's great at sports, she's won awards at the national, no, not even, international level, brah. I'm sorry, you're gonna be hearing Electronic's voice. I don't know what to say, man, I can't do many voices. Not the interplanetary, what a relief. Anyone would consider it an honor to be acquainted with her, brah? To ever spill a drink on you? Is that what you meant? Kyusuke ignored me and carried on. I'll give up my entire manga collection to have her start up a conversation with me. I wouldn't. Shit's mine. Your entire collection? Okay, half. I squinted. Fine, a third, brah. Alright, I get it. I should expect the police to show up at my door now and await a sentence. Death by critical glares. Except, hold on a second, I am entirely innocent. Innocent? Innocent. You don't get it at all, brah. Kyusuke sighed. Then again, maybe you should expect the police, brah. After all, her grandfather is the chairman of the school's board of directors, brah. And what am I supposed to do now? Keep apologizing to her? She was the one who bumped into me and spilt a drink all over me. He sighed again and returned to eating. I turned slowly and looked in the direction of the school queen. Judging by the lively conversation and laughter coming from her table, Ellie-sama had already forgotten about the incident in my lowly self. The juice dried pretty quickly, leaving behind noticeable yellow stains on the white shirt. I didn't really care about my appearance, but the school had its standards, which didn't take kindly to such sloppiness. So I had to change into a jersey and a track jacket. After another uneventful lesson, it was time for the long break. And that meant it was time for lunch. Had I agreed to Himitsu for lunch? I couldn't remember. I could just go for a stroll around the school, seeing that I'd only eaten an hour earlier. I'll join Himitsu, it'll be nice. Maybe we did agree, and I had simply forgotten. I had no desire to listen to Kyusuke's chatter, nor to chew the stale rolls from the snack bar. Well, you do what you like, but I have an arrangement with Himitsu. Okay, bro. He drew out the words cryptically. All the classrooms in our school looked the same to me. Not just because they were in fact identical, but also because I didn't know a single person in them. But others knew me, so no one was surprised when a senior walked into a junior's classroom. Hey, I seem to remember that we planned to meet for lunch, just in case.
We didn't exactly.
Himitsu seemed slightly caught off guard initially, but she quickly continued with a smile.
But I guess we did, shall we?
We walked outside and sat down on a schoolyard bench. Oh, that's cute. Bento is the Japanese term for single portion packaged meals, usually homemade lunch. I'm getting a lesson out of this! Himitsu got out 2 bento boxes and said with a straight face,
Juice!
But they're the same.
No, they aren't. See? One is wrapped in blue and the other in red.
I was sure that the difference ended there. Alright then, give me the blue one. Himitsu made me lunch every day, although for whatever reason, she was too timid to admit it. She just always happened to have an extra bento on her, as if by accident. The way one ended up with an extra show ticket for a girl one liked.
Here.
Not really though. She often told me in advance that she was bringing a bento. But at times like this, she still surprised me. So, let's see what we've got here today. I unwrapped the box and opened it. Rice, tomatoes, tamagoyaki, and oh my, what do we have here? A meat patty, wow. And of course, the mandatory grass. The whole thing was adorned with salad leaves. What's the occasion? I picked up the patty with my chopsticks and held it to my face as if trying to ascertain its authenticity.
Well, you didn't like the breakfast.
No, but wait a second. Didn't you prepare this before breakfast?
Of course not.
She laughed.
I just decided to switch things up a bit.
I really shouldn't have been complaining about her cooking, especially considering that she did it all for free of charge, selflessly, no strings attached, and without expecting anything in return, not even a thank you. My conscience was like a lump in my throat, preventing me from taking a bite, so I said, "Thank you, it's perfect, and I'm sorry about this morning." I wasn't going to come up with a reasonable excuse even if I tried, so better to just apologize and leave it there.
It's okay. I'm used to it.
Himitsu laughed again. But now I felt even worse. I put my head down and concentrated on eating.
I still feel bad for that girl.
She sighed. Huh? What girl? Himitsu looked at me gravely.
This morning, at the gate.
Oh, right. Preoccupied with my meal, I had temporarily drifted off.
Have you talked to her since?
No, I didn't really have anything to talk about. I noticed the reproach in Himitsu's eyes and picked up. I mean, seriously, was I supposed to walk up to her and say, "I'm very sorry about what happened to you. Oh, and how about showing me some thanks for the miraculous rescue?"
Don't be like that. She's having a tough time.
You know, somehow, I didn't pick up on that.
She's just hiding her feelings because it's a habit for her at this point.
Himitsu turned sad. That's fine, I wasn't asking for flowers or medals or commemorated plaques. A simple thank you would have been enough. How hard is that?
For you, it might be easy.
So, am I in the wrong?
I don't know.
Finally, Himitsu smiled.
Anyway, I'm glad you helped her.
Yet at the time, you were saying that we shouldn't get involved. I smirked.
I did, but I've changed my mind.
Why?
Because it was the right thing that you did.
For some reason, Himitsu now reminded me of a Soviet pioneer scout. We're getting Easter eggs already! I think they might have just put it in there because the dude's Russian to begin with. Maybe. The comparison made me burst out with laughter. I choked and the rice went flying everywhere.
Now look what you've done.
She took out a handkerchief and wiped off the grains of rice stuck to my face. Wait, stop. What are people going to think? I was generally much more relaxed about this kind of thing than the Japanese, but such public dotting was perhaps crossing the line? I wondered why it didn't embarrass her.
What should they think?
Himitsu seemed genuinely perplexed. Nothing at all. I looked around exaggeratedly to indicate that we were not alone.
Don't worry about it.
She smiled and started packing away the now empty boxes. Sometimes I just didn't get her. I got back to the classroom just a couple minutes before the bell. Kyusuke was sitting at my desk talking to another classmate. "Hey there, Romeo Bra, how's your lunch?" "It was okay," I replied concisely, but for some reason I still looked away. Sorry, what next? The school day was coming to a close. Exhausted students had started counting off the minutes, but there was still one more class to go. I remember being in school, looking at the clock every second, trying to figure out how many minutes I had left. God, I really thought that 6-hour school days were horrible, and then now at work I've got like it's once a fortnight. A 11-hour day at work. And I thought 6-hour days were long, man, but no. Exhausted, I already read that. Himitsu stopped in during the break to remind me that we had agreed to go shopping after school. I didn't clue in right away. The teacher was trying unsuccessfully to call the class to attention, but most students were ignoring him. True, many of the students at this school were genuinely invested in their education and keen to learn. However, there were a good half of knuckleheads who sat through lessons only for the sake of the prestigious diploma. Why worry about such trivialities, as grades or write-ups, when your whole life was planned out for you decades in advance? Settle down! I'm going to make him a Scottish Japanese teacher. Eating some haggis, the teacher kept repeating. Regrettably, he could not yell at them. Alright, if you don't calm down, you're not going to find out that we have a new girl joining us today. Trying to do one of those Scottish accents is kinda weird. Instantly, the classroom plunged into silence, broken only by a few whispers. A new girl.
It's a new girl. There's a new girl coming. We need the new girl now.
New girl.
A new student?
In the middle of the year? Is she cute, I wonder? I wasn't particularly excited. I had grown accustomed to the constant hubbub, and I couldn't care less if the class gained another student since I didn't know the existing ones very well to begin with. Come on. Oh, come in. A subdued murmur rippled through the classroom, but I felt too lazy to even lift my head. But then I felt a firm shove in the back. Hey! I turned around and looked at Kyosuke. He sat there, mouth ajar. Goodness, who could this new person be if even these overindulged kids were reacting this way? I faced the blackboard. The classroom was a whirlwind of scarlet cherry petals. Does anyone really find this beautiful? But how? Why? The girl from my visions. This visitor from the past was standing a mere 6 feet from me. Well, go ahead and introduce yourself, lass.
My name is Catherine Winters. Actually, I know a few people here already.
She quickly surveyed the classroom without pausing on anyone in particular. I look forward to studying with you. She deliberately distorted a standard Japanese greeting. Catherine Winters. So official. She had always been just Katya to me. She was the one with whom I had watched the petals fall. Then she moved away. She just left without giving a reason. She left me alone, breaking my heart and shattering my dreams. I should have been mad, should have hated her even, but I couldn't. Gosh, how corny that was, how nauseatingly hackneyed. It was as if I'd become trapped inside a second-rate shoujo manga. Shoujo manga is a Japanese comic targeted primarily at a female audience. Oh, I didn't know that. Now she just needed glittering sparkles around her face and some wispy clouds in the background. I would wait for it. There was nothing I wasn't used to. Interesting. I'm interested. I rubbed my eyes and pinched myself hard. Nope, not a dream. Hey Nick, bro, why is she back, bro? Did you know something, bro? Why haven't you said anything, bro? Kyosuke was prattling annoyingly behind my back. My world had contracted into a dark tunnel with me at one end, immersed in total darkness, and her at the other, bathed in light. Except what was waiting for me at the other end was admittedly no paradise. Meanwhile, the teacher showed Catherine to her desk. She walked past me without so much as a glance. I was at a loss for words. Was I to jump up in the middle of a session and scream, "What are you doing here?" My classmates' initial astonishment had faded away in the meantime. Many did in fact know Catherine, because she had been a student at this school before. The rest probably hadn't even expected to see a foreigner. After all, there weren't that many of them even at our school. I doubted if they considered me a foreigner. That is, if they were aware of my existence at all. Okay, I'm interested. I met Katya in my first year of high school. Somehow we ended up dating. She and I, rather incredible. Her mother had been working in Japan for quite some time, same as my parents. Time passed, everything seemed to be going well. Then one day, Katya told me that we could no longer be together. Something about her mother getting transferred. I might have accepted the story. I might have forgiven and forgotten. But did it not hurt her even in the slightest? Was I her fellow colleague whom she could simply wave goodbye to, as one did when transferring to another office? Why, we could have been an office farewell party. I would have stocked up on gifts. I'm sorry, goodbye now. Cold, hollow, everyday words. And after all that, she was just gonna show up in my class? Nice to meet you. I look forward to studying with you. Seriously? Was there not another school in all of goddamn Tokyo? I couldn't believe it. But at the same time, somewhere deep inside, an ember of hope remained. What if she came back because of me? And that's the reason that she's here right now. Right. Hope springs eternal. I was watching the seconds go by slowly on the clock. Talk to her. I had to talk to her. The bell, at last. I worked up the courage and she floated right past me, heading for the door. Had I been too slow, too indecisive? What difference did it make now? Hey, Nick, bro, are you asleep or what? Kyosuke's words seemed to come from somewhere afar, as if from another world. But what was I going to say to her? Hi, long time no see, how are things? Anyway, why hadn't she gone up to me first? Was she scared? Shy? Nonsense, that wasn't like Katya at all. Then she must not have wanted to talk. I knew her too well. Kyosuke was shaking me frantically, muttering something, but I was ignoring him.
Nico-kun!
A new voice.
Nico-kun!
Himitsu. I lifted my eyes and looked somewhere past her.
Earth to Nico-kun, do you read me?
I snapped back to reality. Yeah, what is it?
You've forgotten again, haven't you?
She was pouting comically.
I knew you would, so I decided to come fetch you.
What did she want with me? Fetch me? What for? Oh yes, we, had made some kind of plans. But what did that matter now? Catherine had left, and she was moving further away with each passing second. Perhaps the distance between us now was far greater than all the miles of the Pacific Ocean. Perhaps I had no idea what I was going to say to her. I'd long been secretly hoping to get over her and move on, and now this? Regardless, I had to make a decision. If I were going to run after her, I had to get going. Nah, I think she's bad news. I think Catherine's bad news. How much longer was I going to let this continue? A surgeon has to exercise the rotting flesh to prevent the disease from spreading to the rest of the body. Good choice of words! Since we were classmates now, I was bound to find out eventually why she had come back. Of course I remember, I said confidently, stood up, took Himitsu by the hand and headed for the door. Wait, what about... I turned and gave Kyosuke a glare so furious that he shut up immediately. Anger, resentment, longing, all those emotions had intermingled within me. I was walking down the hallway, oblivious to the world around me. I only stopped when we reached the lockers. I looked around the schoolyard. What if she was still here? Stop. You need a... Buddy, you need a... Buddy. I've been there. You don't want to go there.
Nico-kun.
Himitsu ventured timidly. What? I snapped back, turned around, and realized I was holding her hand. Sorry. I let go of her hand.
Did something happen? Don't say it didn't. I can see something's wrong. Kyosuke-san looked agitated too.
San is a Japanese honorific. Expresses respect used towards those older, higher in status or esteemed by the speaker. Kyosuke? I snickered. The only thing likely to agitate him is some unrealistically shaped anime girl. The look in Himitsu's large eyes did not change. I meant that he was telling me about another anime again. You know, the one about magical girls. They showed at 6. You must have seen it. Why was I lying to her? Why was I lying now? I had to know I couldn't hide Catherine forever. Sooner or later, Himitsu was going to run into her at school. Worse yet, Catherine would show up at her house. They didn't know each other after all. Anyway, it's nothing. Let's go to your store. What did you say it was again? By the station? Himitsu wasn't going to interrogate me. It wasn't her nature.
Guess what? So the teacher asked Ray-kun today, when did man first land on the moon? And you know what he said? 2079. Can you believe it?
Mm-hmm.
And then during PE,
Himitsu carried on as though nothing had happened. Maybe nothing did, where she was concerned. From the outside, the store looked rather humdrum. Was it perhaps reasonable pricing that drew the girls? By the standards of our school, Himitsu's family was not extremely wealthy, but her father worked for the government, so they weren't poor either. We went inside. Himitsu was trying on one outfit after another.
how do you like it?
It's fine.
How about this one? I think this color will be in fashion this winter.
It's fine.
What do you think of this dress?
A little discontent was starting to seep into her voice. I like the last one more. If only I knew what she had tried on before. I was in no mood for a fashion show. To me, Himitsu looked good in any outfit. Why did she even need all this stuff? Did she not have enough clothes? Really, why? I'd known Himitsu for a long time, but I couldn't recall her ever being in a relationship. But she was no longer a child, she was now a beautiful young woman. It was high time for her to get a boyfriend. Hold it, was I feeling jealous? No, of course not. Anyway, if she had found somebody, I would have probably been the first to hear about it. I think the main thing is that you like it.
But I like a lot of them. I like this and this. This one, not so much.
Himitsu was shuffling the clothes. What had she done to deserve such treatment from me? Catherine is back, I said, trying to be casual.
What?
She seemed not to have grasped what I said. She showed up in class today, right before the last session. I guess we're going to be classmates now. Oh. Oh.
Really?
Himitsu turned drastically gloomy and dropped the dress that she liked so much. I see you're not too happy.
I'm happy, I just thought that she moved away permanently.
Well, that's what I thought too.
What is she planning to do now?
What do you mean?
I mean...
Himitsu was hurriedly putting the clothes back on the rack.
She's been gone so long. You're seniors already.
You know, honestly, I haven't made an inquiry into her life plans. Hell, I hadn't even talked to her.
What about you? Are you glad, Nico-kun?
She pried gently. It's not so straightforward for me, but... what's to be glad about? You know full well what happened last year.
Yeah.
But that's all in the past now. We'll see what happens. I'm sure she has her reasons. At least, I was no longer lying to Himitsu. Right, I didn't tell her everything that was in my heart. But, what would that have achieved? In the end, this was between Catherine and me. Are you not going to buy anything? She paused to think.
No, everything's expensive here, and I'm almost out of my allowance money for the month.
But it's only the 7th, I exclaimed. Well, let me make you a present then. That white and yellow dress, it looked good on you.
No, it didn't.
Himitsu counted unexpectedly.
I look fat in it.
You look fat? I laughed loudly, drawing wary looks from the store clerks and the other shoppers. See, this is why I didn't want to come, I whispered. Himitsu just smiled and said nothing back. We hardly talked on the way home. I felt awkward. Now would have been a great time to hear the stories about Ray-kun or Saya-chan, who couldn't hit a volleyball over the net. I like the little animations they got. Don't feel bad because of Katya.
I feel fine.
Come on, I can see it, don't worry. I'll be alright, enough time has passed.
The important thing is that you believe in that yourself.
I do believe it. It's just that it's all a bit unexpected, but you know how she is. She comes uninvited, leaves without saying goodbye, always self-centered. I smiled involuntarily. Himitsu noticed and grew even sadder. Thankfully, we had neared the house. Well, I'll be off. See you tomorrow?
See you.
I wanted to say something else, but instead I merely watched as she walked through the gate. I spent the rest of the day trying futilely not to think about Catherine. At this place, I could really go crazy. Every 5 minutes the phone rang. I didn't pick up because I knew it was Kyusuke. Who else would be calling me? When it came to that crazy otaku, I was lucky he wasn't pounding on my door. In the end, I simply unplugged the phone. I tried to keep myself distracted with TV and video games, but these got boring quickly. I even did some homework for a change, played the bass for a bit, and made a simple dinner. Needless to say, I would rather have eaten Himitsu's cooking, but she must have been busy. Not that Himitsu was under any obligation to make meals for me on a daily basis. No, I just got used to it. Now that I was thinking about it, I realized that habits had become an integral part of my life, to the point where they started to take center stage on it. Catherine's appearance was threatening to throw everything off balance. It was as if I'd grown senile and flabby in the past year and a half, to the point where I craved stability above all. On the other hand, why did I need this upheaval in my life, if nothing good was going to come of it anyway? Suddenly the doorbell rang. No, it can't be Katya, no! It's probably Himitsu, but at this hour? I slowly made my way towards the door, but halfway a thought struck me. Why would Himitsu need to use the bell? No, it's fucking Katya. Get the fuck out of here. Then it had to be Kyusuke, although it was definitely late for him. The evening routine for my well-fed friend was an anime in bed. But whatever. However, there was nobody at the door at all. I looked around and walked outside, but the street was empty. Stupid pranksters! Yet someone had definitely been here since there was a note on the doorstep which I discovered on my way back. The note read, Nikolai-san, be careful. You are in grave danger. Certain very powerful people linked to your father and are after you. This is not a prank or a hoax. Oh! This is getting interesting! Yeah, sure. I suppose next I should have expected to find a busty magical girl in my living room ready to perform my every command. Kyusuke! I shouted. It's not funny! And why bring my dad into this? My parents, the incident. They fled the Soviet Union when I was 7. In Japan, they worked as regular engineers at the Kobayashi Corporation. After they passed, I had the option of going back to the USSR to live with my relatives, but I ended up staying, seeing that I'd lived in Japan for most of my life. My father's friends helped take care of the legal formalities, while his bank account kept me from starving. Kyusuke. I called out, less confidently this time. The only reply I got was from a neighbor who barked something about it being nighttime and my yelling. Well, maybe it wasn't Kyusuke, but then who? If the note was a joke, its authors had failed to deliver the punchline. And what if there was a more straightforward explanation? What if it was for real? I twiddled the note in my fingers. It was an ordinary piece of notebook paper, carefully clipped. The words were Japanese, written in a steady hand, although the spelling left something to be desired. Why write by hand at all, I wondered? Why wouldn't it have been simpler to type? Or in a pinch, to clip words from newspaper and assemble the note that way, like in those cheesy crime shows. At any rate, Kyusuke could be ruled out. I would have recognized his handwriting. You're in grave danger, linked to your father. What if it were those punks? Just because their parents were loaded, it didn't necessarily mean that those brats had A's in Japanese. Or perhaps Elisama's servants had decided to take revenge for the cafeteria incident. No, that was ridiculous. Who could ultimately want something with a simple Japanese student? And why now of all times? Right on the heels of Catherine's return too. To be honest, I couldn't remember how good Catherine's Japanese grades were. I couldn't remember her handwriting either, but I knew she had spent considerably less time in Japan than I had. Catherine had been a decent but not a straight A student. And after a year and a half without practice, at any rate, she was the prime suspect now. It didn't even occur to me to ask, what for? Her motives had stopped making sense to me long before this. Either way, I had to try to find some answers at the school the next day. But now, it was time for bed. I hadn't felt so worn out at the end of the day in a long time. But sleep didn't want to come. I kept tossing and turning and I was getting mad at myself for it. Meanwhile, the clock ticked past midnight. I flinched and perked up my ears. Perhaps I'd imagined it. Not again. I hopped out of bed, eyes scanning the room for anything I could use for self-defense. The base wouldn't do. I walked up to the door on stiff legs and asked in a shaky voice, "Who is it?"
Nico-kun.
I breathed a sigh of relief and opened the door. "Do you know what time it is?"
Sorry, but your phone was off.
"So, is that a reason to turn up here in the dead of night?"
No, but I tried calling several times. I wanted to know if you were going to school tomorrow.
"If you're so concerned about my attendance, you shouldn't wake me up in the middle of the night."
I'm sorry.
Suddenly, I felt terrible. Himitsu was just being herself while I was taking out my problems on her. She wasn't the one who had brought Catherine back or left the note. No, it's me. I should be apologizing. It's been an awful day. I mean, it's been a tough day, very full of events, and I was already asleep. Trying to sleep at any rate.
Okay, I'll be going then.
Good night. I shut the door behind her and returned to the bed. If today was tough, what would tomorrow be like? Oh, 8th of the 9th, 87. A 100 bells were chiming with 100 melodies in my head announcing the morning. In that melody was the cheerful chirping of the birds, the construction on the neighboring street, boisterous shouts of the street vendors, as well as that damn fan which had not quit blowing for a second, and the grumpy muttering somewhere close by. Piercing gaze of large green eyes, the pouting lips, and 2 red braids. Hold on! This has already happened before. Is this going to be a repeating day? I jumped out of bed and stared in bewilderment at Himitsu and blurted out, "What's the day today?"
Tuesday.
She replied, frightened.
What's wrong?
Tuesday, huh? Alright then, let it be Tuesday. I scanned the room meticulously. The open notebook I had tried doing my homework in the night before was still in the same spot. This meant that everything was fine. It occurred to me that the new day hadn't arrived.
What do you mean?
Well, like when you wake up and today is still yesterday, as in some sci-fi novel.
You read too many of them.
Himitsu laughed. Things seemed to be running their ordinary course. Except, I now became aware of a peculiar smell. I sniffed the air. Is that?
Yes, it is. I prepared it ahead of time.
A big pot of borscht sat on the stove. Good lord, why?
Didn't you ask for it yesterday?
No, I didn't. I just mentioned it casually. It was a joke.
Well, you know what?
She said menacingly.
Gonna have to eat this joke now.
Soup for breakfast. That was undoubtedly unorthodox. Himitsu outdid herself this time. Suppose yesterday I'd let drop something about foie gras in 1978 Kaitu Magua. Words! Would they be waiting me too now? Now too? In any case, the borscht tasted quite well. Granted, it wasn't exactly a traditional recipe.
Well?
Himitsu was sitting opposite to me, looking at me intently. Why aren't you eating?
I'm waiting to hear what you think.
Oh yeah, sorry, it's delicious.
Really?
She didn't believe me. Yeah, really. Why should it be otherwise? Himitsu tried the borscht.
Okay, it is indeed good. Now, don't you dare complain about my cooking again.
When did I ever complain? You just don't get my humor.
I do get it.
Just some light-hearted banter, it seemed, but Himitsu did not look her usual self. Every so often, a shadow of sadness passed over her face. Did something happen?
No. What about you?
What about me? At that moment, the events of the previous day flashed before my eyes. The surprise awakening in the Porsche had temporarily made me forget about Xaphan and the note. Everything's fine, just a bit unexpected. Don't worry, I'll be alright.
Good, if you say so.
She smiled.
Let's go, or we'll be late for school.
We exchanged only a few words along the way. Somehow, we just couldn't find a suitable subject for conversation. I didn't want to tell Himitsu about the note just yet, and she probably hadn't had anything happen to her overnight that was worth sharing. Sure, I could have talked about some random stuff, but that wasn't my thing. Finally, we reached the school. No incidents today, I hope. I snickered. Alright, I'll see you later.
Don't sleep in class.
Himitsu smiled and headed for her classroom. Okay, now I had to think of a way to snag Xaphan's notebook without anyone noticing. I hope she'd written something in it. Preferably in Japanese. I was walking down the hallway, lost in thought, when someone called my name. Huh. Anokin-kun, hold it there! The school principal, what was his name? Yes, Kiyama-sensei, what is it? Follow me to my office, please. But the class is about to start. I protested as though these kinds of conversations were something new to me. It won't take long. A weary old man in his 70s, or perhaps even older, Kiyama-sensei was always cloyingly polite and cold. On top of that, he dressed and carried himself in a strictly European manner. I'd always been astounded at those Japanese who exhibited such obsequious devotion to Western culture and way of life. Come on, man! I can't say big words! I can't say big words, man! I could think of any number of sayings on the subject, along the lines of, "To thine self be true." Although here, this had become something of a tradition in its own right. This was, after all, an elite school. What's the issue exactly? Anokin-kun, please come. Well, naturally, he wasn't going to reprimand me in the middle of the hallway, in the presence of the whole school, was he? He went into his office, but someone was already there. Huh, well, if it isn't Uju-sama herself. Uju-sama is a young lady in Japanese. And is young lady in a Japanese manner, usually used to address daughters of very wealthy and or noble families, can be used with irony or sarcasm. Standing next to the principal's desk was, in fact, Ellie-sama. The boy from yesterday! She seemed equally surprised to see me here. Yesterday's cafeteria incident came back to me in a vivid detail. The madame did give me a handkerchief in the end, to wipe myself, and I tossed it into the dirty laundry at the house. Oops, I needed to return it. Let me guess, are you a frequent visitor here? She asked sarcastically. Well, I certainly didn't expect to find myself groveling at your Grace's feet today. That will be all, Kabayashi-san. Kabayashi? The last name sounded familiar. Ellie politely took her leave and walked past me, angrily flashing her eyes. So, Anokin-kun, do you know why you are here? I've got a couple ideas. The principal sighed and gave me a sad look from behind his glasses. Anokin-kun, I understand that Japanese culture is alien to you, but here at this school, we have students of every nationality. We strive to provide all of them with the best opportunities. In return, we expect the appropriate respect and adherence to the school rules. Here we go. I think you ought to understand this, especially considering your situation. What about my situation? Let's not make this personal now. No, what I meant... Embarrassed, he removed his glasses and began wiping them slowly with a special cloth. I wanted to say that we make no distinctions between our students. The rules are the same for everyone. I understand. In that case, you must also understand that you cannot just skip classes for no reason. He put his glasses back on and looked intently at me. And speaking of your attendance record, I understand. But if you understand, why do you keep skipping? Do you know who our school sponsor is? I shrugged. Kobayashi Corporation. This name does mean something to you, does it not? The company's president himself is a chairman of our school board trustees. The centuries-old tradition. Now, Kobayashi Corporation and Kobayashi Ellie. Things were adding up. Interesting. I wondered, would she still be the school queen if she had been born into an ordinary family? A family like Iwamura's, for instance? Enokin-kun, what's that smirk for? Did I say something funny? I'm very sorry, Kiyama-sensei. This will not happen again. I bowed to the ground. Alright, that's enough. The old man apparently hadn't been expecting this degree of repentance from me. I've seen the error of my ways and I promise this will never happen again. Well, that's the most important thing, the fact that you understand and to avoid the repetition. Alright, go now or you'll be late for your class. Thank you very much, I'm going now. I formally took my leave and marched out of his office. So why didn't you tell me that this Ellie-sama of yours is Kobayashi? There were still a couple of minutes left before the beginning of the lesson. I did tell you, brah. No, you didn't. You said her grandfather was the chairman of the board of trustees, as if I'm supposed to know who the chairman is. That's the problem, brah. That you never know anything, brah. Anyway, why do you ask, brah? I got called in the principal's office just now. For skipping classes, brah? What else? At that moment, the bell rang. Only now did I remember about Catherine. She sat behind me so I couldn't watch her continuously. Was she writing anything down? How was I going to grab her notebook unnoticed anyway? Surprisingly, I was hardly at all anxious. Sleep had clarified my thinking such that I found the whole situation more intriguing than troubling. The closing bell finally rang. Catherine got up and left the classroom. This was my chance. I slowly approached her desk, trying to look as inconspicuous as possible. I glanced around. My classmates were all minding their own business. I leaned down, opened the notebook, flipped through the pages. No, the handwriting was completely different. But how? Why? Sure, I had some issues with Japanese characters, but this was much obvious. Catherine did not write yesterday's note. Anakin-kun! I'm just gonna say Anakin. Like from Star Wars. I stood at attention. Caught, exposed, disgraced. Go to the teacher's room with Iwamura-san and bring the printouts for the next lesson. That was close. I looked at Iwamura. She was standing and staring indifferently out the window. Right now, I wanted only one thing, to get out of the classroom as quickly as possible. Hi, well, should we get going? I can go alone. She didn't even look in my direction, but we were told to go together. I'll manage by myself. Under different circumstances, I would have gladly agreed with her. Listen, I understand and all, but I've already been to the principal's office today and I'm not burning with a desire to go back. As you wish. Iwamura shrugged and headed toward the door. The hallways were unexpectedly deserted. It was as if the students were hiding out in anticipation of something. Iwamura walked in silence. After I had defended her day earlier, this is how she was acting. The awkward silence desperately demanded a conversation to break it. So, do you have to walk like this often? I couldn't think of anything better to say. She raised her eyes, looked at me in surprise. That was a first. So, did I achieve the desired effect after all? Well, of course, I am the class president. Oh, yeah, right, sorry. Silence again. It's just that we've never really talked. I don't even know your first name. Why do you need to know? It's only natural. Here, I'm Nikolai. The visibly embarrassed Iwamura, who seemed to be hesitating with the answer. In Japanese culture, addressing someone by their first name is a sign of familiarity. This was especially true in our case. but I didn't hold fast to all these conventions.
Kagome, she said quietly.
What? Really? A loud burst of laughter escaped my lips, spooking several passing girls who stared wide berth around us.
What's so funny?
Kagome frowned. Nothing, it's just, well, you know, it's a weird name. Kagome is a Japanese children's name and a song from it. This is the reason Nikolai is surprised about his classmate's strange name. Oh, children's game. Oh, okay.
No weirder than yours.
Why? What's wrong with my name? It's a common name. Nikolai, Nicholas if you prefer, or Nick.
You're all the same.
She was starting to get worked up, it seemed. Who's we? The Gaijin? Gaijin means foreigner in Japanese, often used in derogatory, disdainful context and manner.
No, the local morons.
How rude. Kagome snorted and turned away. Listen, do you have a problem with me?
I think it's you who has a problem.
Oh, really? And what is it? I'm curious.
Who's that new foreigner?
I opened my mouth in surprise. Why would she be asking about that? Why?
You've been staring at her non-stop for the last 2 days.
Have you been spying on me?
I'd have to be blind not to notice.
She responded unfazed. That's really none of your business.
Of course, it's not.
Kagome smirked. But
neither is my life any of your business. So why are you prying?
She had a point. Say she is someone you'd known before, say you used to see each other, say you don't know her. I'll tell her the truth. We were in a relationship at one point. Kagome's facial expression was hard to read and she remained silent. Why did you bring her up anyway?
It's not every day that we have a new student in our class. And such a striking foreigner as that.
I'm a foreigner too, you know. She looked at me up and down and snickered and said,
Yeah, sure.
I knew it! Wrong features for Japanese. But now I was being denied the title of a proper gaijin as well? Are you always like this? Starting to lose my temper? I was starting to lose my temper.
We've arrived. Wait here. I think I'm kinda giving her that Google Maps lady voice. The one that seductively tells you to turn right into the ocean, but you follow her because her voice is so seductive.
Hey! Just in time too, before I could open my mouth. Kagome went in the teacher's room, but before I knew it, she was back with a large pile of papers.
Carry it.
What? All of it? I couldn't see any way to carry the heap comfortably. What if each of us would carry half?
Didn't you volunteer to come along?
No, I didn't. The teacher sent me, if you recall.
Okay, give it to me.
Kagome attempted to take all the papers from me at once. Oh no, that won't do either. Which of us looked more pathetic now? Spurred on by wounded pride, I walked fast, so the return trip took considerably less time. I dropped the mountain of papers on the teacher's table with a thud, while Kagome took her seat and returned to her customary window gazing. I guess no one deserves to be bullied, but man, I could almost understand those punks from yesterday. Judging by the clock, the bell was less than a minute away. Catherine's desk was empty. I turned to Michael, who sat next to her. Did Catherine... New girl... Did she go somewhere? What voice should I give Michael? I don't know, hey. Maybe... I don't know. I wasn't really paying attention. Why? Never mind, no reason. Bummed, I sat at my desk. Could she have somehow noticed that I opened her notebook? No way, Catherine wasn't even in the classroom at the time. Did someone tell her? How long ago did she leave? I'm telling you, I don't know.
Are you talking about the new girl? I think she went to see the principal.
A classmate had overheard our conversation. Thanks. The chair beneath me felt like it was on fire. That's how badly I wanted to run after her. But to what end? What was I going to tell her? As the bell sounded, my feet seemed to acquire a will of their own. They carried me to the door, then past the teacher and then out into the hallway. Where are you going? Nikolai? I turned the corner at a run and stopped. What the hell was I doing? Why all this? The school had gone silent, froze still as though in awe of the inescapable might of pure knowledge. Knowledge. I was slowly tiptoeing through the empty halls toward the principal's office. If I were to run into one of those teachers now, I would have to explain myself all over again. On the other hand, it would be no better if I showed up at his office myself. Speaking of which, here it was. I passed an ear to the door, but no sound was coming from the other side. Either they were playing the silent game or Catherine was not there. So what next? It was too late to go back to class. I wandered the empty halls and didn't even notice how I ended up in the old wing. A school had been repeatedly rebuilt since it first opened its doors right after the war, with new buildings added on as old ones fell into decay. Oh, is this going to turn into a sort of horror game too? Yes! Yes! This is what I've been longing for! Inefficient if you ask me. Why not tear down the old structure first and build a new one in its place? Theoretically, there shouldn't have been anyone in this wing, but suddenly I heard music. A guitar. The sound was coming from what, judging by the plaque, was the old music room. I opened the door a crack. Ha! No one other but Ellie Kobayashi herself. Of all people, she was the last one I expected to find here. She was doing an excellent job playing, though. The tune was beautiful, and the execution was equally good. Music, after all, was one area that I knew a thing or two about. Ellie herself seemed to be glowing with happiness, looked nothing like the prim princess whom I encountered in the principal's office that morning. Cool, though, this lyrical digression was. I certainly couldn't let a chance like this slip by. Well, well, and who do we have here? The guitar went abruptly mute. My applause was the only sound interrupting the silence that had descended on the place. Uju-sama, I did not know that you played the guitar too. Many emotions flitted across her face. Embarrassment, surprise, annoyance, resentment. You! Please, pay no attention to me, carry on. You! What are you doing here? I followed a beautiful siren song, but I could never have imagined it would be you, Uju-sama. Enough! Ellie blurted out, stood up abruptly, and froze, as if not knowing what to do next. Hey, come on, don't take offense. I just didn't realize you played the guitar. Somehow I don't associate you with this instrument. Now violin, maybe. I can play the violin too, she cut in. Really? Well, that's cool. Why aren't you in class? It's no mystery why I'm skipping. What about yourself? I'm not skipping. We are having a break. Alright. I smirked. You don't have to justify yourself to me. I'm not justifying myself. You, on the other hand, should watch your behavior. What were you doing at the principal's office this morning? I came for a cup of tea. In any case, it's none of your business. I wasn't trying to be rude, but that was precisely how it came out. Actually, it is my business, seeing as my grandfather, well, I'm aware. She gave me a surprised look. What, is it a secret? No, of course not. Even if you are, suddenly we heard voices in the hallway. Hide! Ellie whispered anxiously. Why, it's a break for you and I'm used to it. I said sardonically, albeit in a lower voice. She didn't answer but was looking at me pleadingly. She must have had her reasons. We'll hide. Very well, except I don't see where we could hide here. In here. Ellie grabbed my hand and dragged me to a small door which I had missed initially. The door opened and into a cramped utility closet. What, just like this? I hesitated at the door. The closet was definitely not roomy enough for 2 people. Get in already! However, she clearly thought otherwise, because the next thing I knew, she literally shoved me inside before stepping in herself. Great. We were now packed in like sardines. And this place reeked. Yet, perceptible above the stench of dampness, moldiness, and dust was the sweat aroma of Ellie's perfume. Sweet aroma. A killer combination, to say the least. The classroom door reopened and several people entered. I think I heard something. You must have misheard Kiyama-sama, sensei. The principal was talking to one of the teachers. I'm not hearing things. I may be getting on in years, but I'm still more than capable. Heavens, no. Kiyama-sensei, I didn't mean anything of that sort. Anyhow, this ramshackle place should have been torn down long ago. A third voice joined the conversation, and apparently I'm making all the teachers Scottish. This ramshackle, as you called it. The principal let out a sigh so loud I could hear it clearly even from the closet. I remember arriving here as a young teacher right after the war. Traded in my old rifle for a pointer, you could say. Chalk taking the place of ammunition. I would have guessed that our principal was so sentimental. I shifted my gaze toward Ellie. She turned red like a boiled lobster, and her breathing became rapid and irregular. An awkward situation, to be sure. Just because she played the guitar didn't necessarily mean she had lots of experience in the area of, well, you know. But who was I to judge? Yes, I'd gone out with Xaphan, but I'd gotten somewhat used to her, whereas here was a completely different girl standing next to me. And by next I mean right up against me. And I feel like I've been doing this too much so you guys can't see me very well. So I should probably start standing up straight. I do it without noticing. My heart started beating faster and I gulped loudly. Ellie gave me a frightened look. I made a face that was supposed to mean quiet. She seemed to have understood. Meanwhile, the principal continued his oration. And after all that you talk of, this is our cultural heritage and should be made into a museum. Certainly, Kiyama-sensei, but let's go now. We have a meeting coming up. Yes, forgive me. I got a bit carried away. The moment that the door closed behind them, Ellie came flying out the closet. I stepped out after her. I'd say something. It was a bit tight in there. She looked at me dumbfounded. Tight? Tight? You pervert, you groped me all over. I didn't touch you at all. You groped me with your eyes, then... You don't think I could see it? Feel it? Calm down already, will you? How can you grope someone with your eyes? And anyway, it was your idea to hide in there. Yes, but... Well, that's all there is to it. Ellie looked sad now and she lowered her gaze. I suppose it's unbefitting for a young lady to behave like this, isn't? She smiled sadly. Well, I'm not the best person to give advice on these matters, but for what it's worth, I don't think there's anything wrong with playing a guitar. You must enjoy music a lot, huh? Yeah. This time her smile was more genuine. Then I don't see a problem. And then a distant bell announced it was break time. Alright, I've gotta go. See you. Her final parting smile was utterly disarming. I was left standing alone inside an empty music classroom of the abandoned old wing. What a strange girl.
Drink time.
The whole musical interlude made me forget entirely the reason I'd wound up here in the first place. I've been looking for Xaphan. I had absolutely no desire to go back to class where I could expect another scolding. Simply skipping was bad enough, but to have to run out of the classroom right in front of the teacher? No, thank you. I managed to slip out of the building unnoticed, and here I was, free as the wind, strolling down a sidewalk in one of Tokyo's central districts. I just wanted to chill out. This whole day had been waste. The only thing I achieved was determining that Catherine had not written yesterday's note. The note. Unpleasant thoughts crept into my head. But if she didn't write it, who did? What if it wasn't a prank? Just what's going on? More had happened to me in the past day and a half than over the preceding year and a half. That entire time, I hadn't really socialized with anyone except maybe Himitsu. Well, add to that Kyusuke and occasionally Michael. Now Catherine was back, and there were Kagome and Ellie. What next? Was I going to turn into a magical girl? As if by chance, I ended up near a familiar bar. A couple rounds of beer were an absolute must right now. I'd relax, clear my head. But he's not 21. Because don't you have to be 21 to drink? Or is that... Or was it... It is 1978. Or 1987. I think it was 1987, yeah. Might have been different then. The inside wasn't crowded, which made sense for this time of the day. People were supposed to be either at work or at school. Like in that joke about the 3-story building and the hurricane. Even though I wasn't a stranger here, I always had a fake passport on the ready. A classmate whose father worked in law enforcement had hooked me up with one at one point. There were lots of students at our school who had these passes to the adult life. That's how he did it. How would you prove it wasn't real? A document was a document, especially when some insolent snot was shoving it in your face. Not to mention the bar's owner was Russian. Hey, well that's a lot of help. You can be like, hello, comrade, I'm here from Mother Russia, the motherland. Hello, I'm here to drink all the vodka, and my accent is very bad. Please do not take offense. Chuckling, he usually told people that he used to be a pirate who got shipwrecked off the coast of Japan. That was a tall tale, of course. Most likely, he was just a regular immigrant like my parents. I sat down at the counter and ordered a beer. Hey, Kolya, what's up? You're early today. Yeah, it's just the way it worked out. You aren't going to get into trouble at school, are you? You know how they're strict about these things here. I giggled nervously. Okay, I see, it's none of my business. A good bartender is invariably a good psychologist. It is almost a qualification for the job. Beer at this place was served in pint-sized mugs, which made me very happy. Squealing with pleasure after downing a tiny glass in one gulp was not my thing. Yuck. I took a copious draught. Catherine's back. The bartender raised his eyebrows and asked with unfeigned surprise, And what are you going to do now? At times, I wondered if showing empathy to customers was something more than just a professional skill for him. What can I do? She hasn't been too eager to talk, and neither have I. At any rate, I'm certainly not going to throw myself at her. And why has she come back? She says because of her mother's work. I suppose that is the case. She wouldn't come back by herself, would she? Most likely not. So... I'm in this weird spot now. You know how they say, life is like a zebra, a black stripe followed by a white stripe, then a black one again, then a white one again. I've never heard that. Yep, and then the arse. We both laughed. You know what, Kolya? Don't get down. He said encouragingly. You still have your whole life ahead of you. The two of you will make up 100 times over before the end. And if not, you'll find yourself another girl. Look how many of them there are around. Yeah, I'm sorry I'm butchering the accent, but it'll get better every time. I just can't roll the R's. The bartender spread out his arms, inviting apprehensive looks from the few schoolgirls nestled at a table in the furthest corner of the room. Thanks for the comforting words. There's so much else besides that anyway. Life is in a full swing. And each swing hits you on the head. Jeez, did he keep a glossary of sayings under that counter? The bar door flew open, a group of young people entered. Having immediately recognized among them the punks from the day before, I instinctively buried my face in the mug. Was I scared? So it seemed. I sat down at a table and ordered a beer and cocktails for the girls. You know them? The bartender asked quietly, leaning in toward me. I wouldn't say I know them, but we've met. I gave them the occasional sidelong glance. I wondered if I should get up and leave. Wouldn't that look cowardly, though? Then again, to whom? They hadn't even noticed me. No sooner did I think that than one of the guys got up and walked over to the counter. Hey, I know you! If you say so, I said as calmly as possible, without even sparing him a glance. I think you don't know who you're dealing with, Gaijin. I'm not dealing with anyone. So it wasn't you who punched my friend in the face yesterday? If it was me, he had deserved it. Really? Then how about we step outside for a little chat? I looked at the bartender, but he only shrugged. Some empathy, damn it. Alright, let's step out. What else could I do? Half a minute later, we were standing in an alley behind the bar. A couple of older guys joined the school kids. Where did they even come from? Not so tough now, are ya? Said the one I punched yesterday. That'll teach him to stand up for whores. I looked at the girl. Compared to her, Kagome was Mother Teresa. Well, what next? Gonna beat me, are you? 4 against 1? That commands some respect. What happened to the code of honor? The Yakuza have one. I stared at the largest guy among them. You there! You've definitely got the mugshot for a thug. The older ruffians clenched their teeth, their expressions changing. What did you say? Let's get it over with already. A thought flashed through my mind. What if I strike first? That way, at least, I would retain a smidgen of self-respect. But I had no time to decide. A strong blow to my back threw me to the ground. That was low. Their blows hit hard, but they did not go on for long. I curled up into a ball, covering my head with my arms. It hurt. By the time I recovered my senses, those bastards had vanished without a trace. I got up slowly and felt myself all over. Nothing was broken, it seemed. My face was mostly intact as well, except for a black eye. I returned to the bar and sat down in the same seat. I no longer felt like carrying on with a cordial conversation with the bartender, although what could he have done? Stand at my side and fight? Call the police? Nonsense. Hey, there's... He pointed off to the side with his eyes. I turned my head. Sitting a few feet away from me was... Catherine. Well, hi, I guess. I said a little while later after waiting for her to open the conversation. Fat chance of that happening. Hi, Catherine replied indifferently. I forgot the voice I gave her. Even though it was like maybe an hour ago that I said it? Yeah, probably an hour ago. I shifted to a closer seat while she ordered a cocktail for herself. What's with the face? Nothing serious. She wasn't buying it. I fell. Face first on the concrete several times in a row. Yep, it got lucky this time. But next time, victory will be mine. Is that so? Said Catherine apathetically. So, are you also missing school? I had to start the conversation in the most neutral way as possible. Also? She looked at me askance. Well, it's nothing new to me. I guess it isn't. I heard you went to the principal. Maybe I did. What of it? The tone of her voice didn't change, but her eyes flashed. Katya, I don't want to start everything up again. Then don't. I'm not. Or was I? Just put yourself in my shoes. How would you be reacting? Wouldn't you be asking the same questions? What questions? Fine. I understand you're here because of your mother's work, but this particular school, why? What? Am I getting in your way? Catherine was sipping on her cocktail with an expression of absolute indifference. No, of course not. It's just, when I think about how we parted back then. That's all in the past. You don't really believe that I should have chosen a different school or changed my life in any way just because of you, do you? Why would I do that? Simply to avoid running into you extra time? That's not what I was thinking. She was right, actually. I had no comeback. But she was right, only if she really didn't have any feelings for me right now. Everything pointed towards this being the case, but I just didn't want to believe that she could be so cruel. So everything's alright?
Of course.
Then we can remain friends? A barely perceptible smirk appeared on Catherine's face.
Do you want us to?
Why not? The past is the past. We have to move on, go on living.
You sound like someone with a PTSD.
That's when I started to get worked up. It's all in the past for me as well, if that's what you mean.
Is it good?
Great! I turned away pretending to study the menu. Was I ought to get up and leave? That would be it. I'd have to forget all about her for sure. Damn it! Was I really still hoping for something? Each time Catherine hurt me more and more, but like a mindless gnat, I kept slamming against the glass, as if I was trying to prove something to someone. In this year and a half, I'd become so accustomed to living with memories of her that now, when she was so close, I simply couldn't let go of her. These memories seemed like my only hope, the only thing holding me back from doing something foolish and fatal. Was I thinking of something specific? Unlikely. But I was hoping naturally. I see you're not wasting any time. Catherine gave me a surprised look. Nothing was worse than indifference. Better if she got mad at me. I snatched the cocktail out of her hands and said snidely, "Getting an early start, are we?" As I raised a glass to my mouth, I heard Catherine's indifferent voice somewhere in the background.
It's non-alcoholic.
It really was. Sorry. I set the glass back down on the counter.
You, on the other hand, have kept to your habits, I see.
What do you mean? Her eyes shot over the empty beer mug, which I had tried to move as far away as possible. Gosh darn it, bartender. It's been a rough day.
Yeah? How so?
Are you really interested?
Just keeping up the conversation. Or would you instead prefer to be ignored?
I sighed and answered. I was called in the principal's office. Yep, same reason as always. Missing school. Well, you know me. And there was also a curious episode with a certain Uju Sama.
Your new girlfriend?
Are you mocking me?
No. Just keeping up the conversation, I told you. If I'm disturbing you, I can leave.
I don't have a girlfriend. Nor have I ever. I added in a half-whisper.
I see. And how's Himitsu doing?
If you're so interested, you could visit her and ask. I don't believe you've had a falling out with her.
Perhaps I will go see her.
Catherine responded vaguely and glanced towards the entrance. Was she about to leave? Something stung on the inside. I wanted her to stay. Even if she was going to mock me. Himitsu is fine. I don't even know what else to tell you. Same as always, basically.
Same as always, is she?
She drawled. Are you surprised that someone can actually treat me normally?
Of course not. I'm happy for Himitsu. And I'll definitely visit her if I get the chance, but now I need to go.
She set the unfinished cocktail down on the counter and stood up. Alright, see you at school. Catherine nodded and exited the bar. Dang, bro, you took a beating. Don't even start. How about the drink on the house? Did he want to make it up to me? No thanks. I think I've had enough for today. Bye, Mr. Bartender. Bye, Mr. Russian Bartender. I left the bar and stretched. As expected, the bruises were aching. If the past couple days of my life resembled some dumb manga from Kyosuke's collection, my encounters with Xaphan felt more like a soap opera. A vicious, sticky, dark brew with a beginning but with no end. How long would this go on? In less than a year, I was going to graduate, and then what? My dad's savings weren't going to last long. I would need to get a job, thoughts of a higher education. It didn't even cross my mind, but what skills did I possess? Did I want to toil interminably? Day after day, like the Japanese. Did you know there is even a particular word in Japanese that means death from overwork? Questions, questions. It was getting late. I'd been wandering aimlessly around the city for several hours, occasionally stepping inside stores or just window shopping. I was killing time, killing yet another day of my life. It was completely dark by the time I arrived at my house. The lights were on inside. I immediately remembered yesterday's notes and a light shiver traveled down my spine. No, that was ridiculous. An assassin waiting for a victim inside a house with the lights turned on? It's Himitsu. Himitsu's in there. Still, logical or not, someone was obviously inside. It's Himitsu. I carefully opened the door and saw a pair of female shoes in the hallway. Himitsu. I should have guessed right away. Who else had any need of me? Hi, I said carelessly, entering the kitchen. Himitsu was sitting at a set table. She had apparently been waiting for some time.
Nico-kun, where have you been? I was worried.
If a moment ago I might have been glad to see her, all that went out the window now. Not another interrogation.
Oh, what happened to you?
She jumped up from the chair when she noticed my black eye. Nothing serious. I ran into some robbers, made short work of them, but one got me in the eye.
Stop talking nonsense.
It's no nonsense. You want to see the police report? She pouted but calmed down, having probably realized that I was fine.
I asked Kuseki-kun, and he said you weren't present for the last few lessons.
So I wasn't. What of it? I snapped back.
Nothing, it's just so much has happened lately that I was worried.
Why would you worry about me? Did you think I was gonna go drown myself?
No, I didn't.
Nothing much has happened anyway. I was about to add, and not to you anyway, but stopped myself at the last second. After all, Himitsu had done nothing wrong. Meanwhile, she was looking at me expectantly. I'd tell her something. I debated whether I should mention Catherine. It's not like it's a secret or anything, right? We didn't do anything objectionable. Still, maybe Himitsu didn't need to know about this. I was with Katya. Really now. Why was I feeling all embarrassed about this like an 8th grader on his first date?
Really cool. How is Katie-chan?
Himitsu replied without skipping a beat. As if reading from a script. I suppose she's fine, but you know how she is. Sometimes you have to drag every word out of her. Himitsu smiled.
Alright, sit down and eat. The dinner is cold, of course, but you only have yourself to blame.
I was in fact hungry as hell. We ate dinner in silence, without talking, without the TV, and without even looking at each other. I could almost feel the change in the air from the tension. It was one thing for me to stay silent, but why was Himitsu keeping quiet? Just because I told her about Catherine? After so many years, Himitsu has come to know me very well, so she knew that there were times when it was better to remain silent, and times when it was better to do the opposite. So what was she hoping to achieve now? She knew I wasn't a fan of small talk, but the silence was becoming unbearable. How was school?
Fine.
That's it, just fine, nothing happened to Saya-chan?
No, why do you ask?
I set down the chopsticks and leaned back in my chair. Probably because you've been quiet the entire dinner.
I'm not quiet, I mean, not on purpose.
Himitsu got flustered. If this is because of Catherine...
No, of course not.
Then what is it? She was obviously working up the courage to continue. These sorts of conversations had always been difficult for her.
Because I was worried. Did you even check the time? You could have called at least.
Called? Called where?
Here.
She replied in a faltering voice. How was I supposed to know you'd be here? We aren't yet living together last I checked.
Maybe that's unfortunate,
she mumbled softly. I pretended not to hear it. The conversation clearly took a wrong turn. Alright, you know what? I'm exhausted today. You head home and I'll do the dishes.
But...
I'll see you tomorrow. Himitsu lowered her head and stood up.
Good night.
When the door closed behind her, I let out a sigh of relief. Right now, I absolutely needed some time alone. I felt as though trapped between 2 fires, or even 3 or 4. A veritable ring of fire that was slowly but surely closing in on me. And how was I acting? Sluggishly and indifferently, like a decrepit old man who had long since stopped caring about his life. On the one hand, there was Catherine, who I simply couldn't put out of my mind. On the other hand, there was Himitsu, who clearly wasn't happy to see Catherine back.
Then there was also the note, the new acquaintances, my non-existent plans for the future, and the future itself, shrouded in a thick haze of uncertainty. I stretched out in the bed and recalled Ellie. Even if the closet episode felt like it had been ripped straight out of some tacky manga, it had still been a pleasant one. What if Ellie could help with the note somehow? No doubt she had good connections. As for Himitsu and Catherine, come what may, perhaps things would resolve themselves. Thinking these thoughts, I fell asleep. I was woken up by the telephone. What time was it? It cost me some pains to make it to the phone. Hello? I sounded terribly groggy. Nikolai, you are in great danger. You need to be extremely careful. A voice said in Russian. So I should be Russian accent. I was still asleep, half asleep, so I couldn't really understand what was going on. What? Who is this? I repeat, be extremely careful. Pay particular attention to what you are doing, who you talk to, and what you talk about. The voice sounded unnatural, as though the speaker had pressed a cloth against the receiver. Who is this? What do you want? Was it you who left the note? You have been warned. Beeping. Now I was petrified. Should I call the police? What would I say? An ordinary school kid of no interest to anyone, a note and a telephone call? It all added up to a prank. However, the first thing I did was to lock all the doors and unplug the phone. It could be a prank, but then who is the prankster? Michael wouldn't do it, and Kyusuke, it wouldn't even cross his mind. And why did all this start just as Catherine returned to Japan? And if she didn't write the note... I pulled the blanket over my head. Sleep refused to come, but the fear eventually subsided a bit. I told myself that I would try to sort all of this out tomorrow with a fresher head. This is very interesting. It was 87. 9th of the 9th, 1987. I woke up late. The time was already past noon. The house was quiet. Too quiet, really. I'd missed school again. Oh well, the hell with it. After all, my life was now in the balance. Or was I being overly dramatic? I walked into the kitchen and stood there in stupor. My head felt heavy, thoughts jumbled together. I wanted to sleep a little longer, say another 10 hours or so. A glass of cold water helped bring me back to life. I looked at myself in the mirror. Oddly enough, the black eye was gone. I checked all the doors and windows, all locked securely, the way I had left them the night before. The foyer contained a note from Himitsu. I was worried, blah blah, we'll come by after school, more blah blah blah. Thank you, but no, thank you. This must have been the first time in my 18 years alive that I faced a situation like this. The move to Japan at an early age, the challenges of adaptation, the deaths of my parents. All this had been tough, but they seemed more like my fate than the result of someone's malicious actions. This time was different. Something was threatening me directly. Someone was warning, cautioning me, sincerely or not. But who could possibly take such an interest in my person? That's when I had an epiphany. It did seem improbable that I personally could attract any notice, but perhaps this was about my parents. They did, after all, immigrate from the USSR and work for the Kobayashi Corporation. Besides, the voice on the phone yesterday was Russian, altered for sure, but clearly unaccented. I didn't know the exact nature of my parents' work, but it could very well have been of a severe sort. A lump formed in my throat, the sort of work one could get killed for. The most frustrating thing was that I knew nothing about it. But who was going to believe me? I'd act fast. I pulled out my dad's old address book and started scanning it for numbers of his co-workers. A few I'd met and some I've heard of. Either way, anything was better than sitting around and waiting. Good afternoon, my name is Nikolai Anokin and I in luck with the first dozen numbers. Some people were no longer at the old jobs, others didn't pick up, one person even passed away. I turned the page. There was a number written in my father's firm, even hand, and underneath it named Ichinose-san. Ichinose? I'd heard that last name before. long ringtones, 1, 2. After 10, I was about to hang up when a familiar elderly voice sounded on the other end. Hello? At that point, I remembered the Ichinose-san used to visit us frequently when I was younger. The ever-polite, affable, good-humored old gentleman. He used to bring me candies and ask with interest about school and my hobbies. Then he and Dad would sit together in the garden for long and, with the air of importance, do a lot of smoking and conversing together. Good afternoon, my name is Nikolai Anokin and I... Oh, Nikolai-kun! He interrupted. Long time no see, how are things? Fine. I gave a short answer. Was I supposed to dump everything at once on him? All that had befallen me in the last few days? I'm sorry about your parents. The voice in the receiver turned sad. I vaguely recalled seeing Ichinose-san at the funeral. Thank you. Actually, that's why I called. I mean, not literally, of course, but... For a moment I remained silent. Sorry, I'm a bit nervous. Could you please tell me about my father's work? I know he worked as an engineer, but what exactly did he work on? Has something happened? Why do you suddenly want to know? Now of all times. To tell the truth, something did happen, but it doesn't matter. Why not? Can't you tell me? Yeah, of course I could, but it's just... What reasons did I actually have to trust him? Just because he'd been over to our house a couple times and had been kind to me? So, are you gonna tell me or not? Is this some kind of a secret? Not a secret, no, but it's somewhat complicated. I get that's complicated. I'm no longer a child, I spouted back. So what happened? Some people came by, asked questions about my father, about his work. I lied. Asked about his work, did they? Ichinose stretched out the words ambiguously. What exactly did they ask? No, I mean, I didn't tell them anything because I don't know anything myself. And how were they asking? What do you mean? Well, what was the tone? Now I was absolutely sure that Ichinose knew far more than what he was letting on. What's more, Ichinose seemed apprehensive. Should I be worried? That's for you to know, he replied coldly. If I knew anything, I wouldn't be calling you, right? Nikolai, you shouldn't drag yourself into this. Why? Do you know something? Tell me. This concerns me too, you know. No, this does not. In fact, concern you. If you lay low, everything will be alright. But, that's all I'm going to say. Don't call here again. Short ringtones now. Interesting. Everything will be alright. Yeah, sure it will. On the other hand, I could at least thank him for indirectly confirming my suspicions that this was indeed about my father. I collected my thoughts and tried to remember everything my father had ever told me about his job. An engineer. What do engineers do? Build stuff or more accurately draw up plans? God, what did a 16-year-old kid care about such minutiae? What mattered to me was that I was receiving my allowance and that was well at home. I was confident about one thing. My father had not worked on construction as such. Defense, maybe? Had he worked for the military? But what difference did that make? I still didn't know a thing about his actual work, unless the whole thing was some sick practical joke. The hour hand on the clock moved extraordinarily towards 3 and I hadn't even eaten breakfast yet. Himitsu would arrive soon. The note made that clear. Enough already. She wasn't my mother after all. Of course, as I had thought that, I felt sheepish. Regardless, I absolutely had to get some fresh air. Oh, back to the bar. I decided to go to my favorite bar for lunch, even if it was the site of yesterday's unfortunate incident. The bell above the door made a pleasant chiming sound as I entered, but none of the handful of patrons present looked my way. Only the bartender gave me a customary smile and waved at me. Hey, Nick, we've seen a lot of you lately. Not that I'm not happy, but after yesterday. I stopped in front of the bar, not knowing what to say. No, my resentment toward him had already passed. After all, people had their own lives and jobs to worry about. Will it be the usual? No, I've come for lunch. Got it, and what would you like? Don't know. Give me a steak, I guess. It shall be done.
It is covered in vodka. The bartender managed to imitate the Japanese way of addressing guests to near perfection, but he twisted in his own peculiar way such that he ended up sounding more like an overly gregarious host of a medieval tavern. I sat down at a table and sank into thoughts. The steak turned out to be tasty, as expected. The food here was as good as the beer. I was lazily picking my teeth with a toothpick when the sonorous, pleasant sound of the door chimes was heard again, signaling the arrival of a new visitor. Standing in the doorway was Michael. Here was one person I had never expected to see here, though why not? He noticed me and came to sit at my table. A split second later, the bartender stood by us and was placing the menu in front of Michael. "A friend of yours, Nicolas?" he asked in Russian, hideously drawing out my name in a French manner. Something like that, yes, a classmate," I replied in Japanese. "What does the sir desire?" I couldn't decide whether I was more irritated or amused by his performance. "Just coffee." "Right away," chimed the bartender before taking off. "Is school over?" "Is it? And you didn't show up?" "Yeah, I had some business to take care of, shall we say. I'd known Michael for 2.5 years. He was from the States and his parents had also been working in Japan for a while. We'd never been particularly close, but his seriousness and uncommonly mature attitude towards life commanded absolute respect. Could say he was the mirror opposite of Kyusuke. I take it you don't want to go into details? Not especially. Some guys at school have been bragging that they thrashed someone yesterday. And? I snarled back, irritated. It was hard to tell if Michael was hinting at me or just sharing school gossip. You haven't heard anything about that? No. I see. He kept sipping his coffee, gazing somewhere past me. Uncommunicative as I could be at times, Michael was something else. Did he really feel comfortable at that moment? So what's going on at school? The usual. And how's Catherine? The question slipped off the tongue on its own accord. I hadn't even thought about her until that moment. Michael put down his cup and stared at me intently. Don't know, we're not acquainted, remember? Oh right, back then we were in different classes. He kept giving me a weird look. What? Was there something between the two of you? I bet you've already heard everything from Kyusuke. But I'm asking you at the moment. Okay, yeah. There was something, but that was a long time ago. And now? And now there's nothing. I see. Are you curious because the two of you are from the same country? I'm just wondering, why did she enroll at this particular school? I don't know, you have to ask her. By now I was sick of the question, even if typically I was the one posing it to myself. Have you thought that maybe there's a reason behind it? What difference does it make what I have or haven't thought? You don't know Catherine. Thinking is wasted on her. Sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. This has nothing to do with you, I just have bigger things to worry about. Michael kept his voice calm and the level the entire time that it was beginning to annoy me. If he didn't actually care, why ask all these questions? Anyway, this is not the most pleasant of subjects. Sorry, I didn't realize that the two of you still... He coughed pointedly. That was an unpleasant topic for you. Yet he could have guessed. Imagine that. I felt like tossing some bills on the table and walking out. But I had few friends as it was, while this kind of behavior was, on the whole, typical of Michael. Did anyone ask about me at school? I haven't heard anything. I see. And how are things with you anyway? Not bad. Except that I have no free time at all. I'm preparing for college admission. College admission. I stretched out the words. And where do you have in mind? Most likely go back to the States. What, tired of this place? I smirked. It's just that higher education is better there. Michael calmly responded. His words touched a nerve. Unlike him, I had little choice. Even if I wanted to, the best I could hope for with my grades was a minimum wage job. Our conversation had not gelled from the get-go. Well, I think I'll be heading out. See you at school tomorrow. I'll see you, he said in the same calm tone. I waved goodbye at the bartender and exited. Had the bar been a courtroom, Michael would have fit the part of the prosecutor to perfection. Stern, cold, dispassionate, operating with only facts. And what would my chances have been then, seeing how I flew off the handle at the drop of the hat? I was wandering aimlessly around the city, passing street after street and neighborhood after neighborhood. I found myself in a part of town where I'd never been before. A curious thing Tokyo was, of course, much larger than my hometown, but back during my childhood, everything looked huge to me. The apartment, the yard, the kindergarten, building, the store across the street. So my mind could comfortably draw comparisons between that tiny patch of childhood space and the multi-million megalopolis. I suppose I had always been at ease in a crowd of the perpetually rushing strangers. Sometimes I walked in the same direction as they did, as though in lockstep, and other times I marched against the flow. The crowds paid no attention to me, accepted me as one of their own, and thank goodness for that. Perhaps because of this ability of mine, I now noticed that someone was following me. Sure, it's often the case that a stranger happens to be going the same way as you. One turn to a crossing, no problem. But when you're just wandering around and someone's following you like a shadow, and you clearly know that's no coincidence. I quickened my pace, crossed on red, turned into an alleyway and walked briskly through it. Two possibilities were emerging. Either I was paranoid, or I had managed to shake off my tail. I pretended to be checking out a TV behind the window of an electronics store. At least 5 minutes had passed, but the mysterious pursuer did not show up. It occurred to me that I'd finally lost my mind. It's called for a sedative or a drink, but I hadn't made it up. I was sure that someone would be following me. Who and why? That was another question. Maybe I relaxed too early. Was it worth checking again? Try to locate the tail. Anyway, it couldn't hurt to try. Well, it could, but if it were a professional shadowing me, then he wouldn't let me bust him so easily twice in a row. I went in the clothing store and as quickly as I could bought a brightly colored windbreaker and a cap after confirming that no one was watching me from the street. If you want to hide something, hide it in plain sight. The principle applied to a crowd as well. I darted into one of the numerous side streets, threw on the jacket and the hat, tucked the shopping bag behind a downspout, and ran to the next street. I stopped around the corner next to a newsstand, drew the cap lower over my face, and kept glancing around me. Sure enough, before long, the now familiar figure appeared in the distance. Made sense. He had taken a parallel side street instead of following me on my heels. I made a half turn, hunched my shoulders, and even crouched slightly to appear shorter. My pursuer was looking around frantically, having clearly lost sight of me. Yet he passed right by the newsstand without paying any attention to the guy in the flashy windbreaker. I followed him. The man was middle-aged, dressed in an unseasonably warm trench coat, dark pants, and black shoes. He looked like a typical office worker. He stopped at an intersection, looked around, and sighed loudly. I was literally 2 meters behind him. Lost someone? I finally ventured. Huh? He turned sharply and gave me a bewildered stare. No, everything's alright. Just as quickly, the stranger's face took on an impassive expression, and he prepared to leave. Why were you following me? Following you? I wasn't following anyone. He regained his composure in the blink of an eye. I was supposed to meet someone here, but it looks like the person is not going to show up. That someone isn't me? Young man. He looked me up and down and continued coldly. This is the first time I've seen you. Then why follow someone you see for the first time? I have to go. I didn't try to stop him, that would have been something else. But damn it, things were going from bad to worse. First the notes, then the calls, the mysteries of my family's past, and now someone trailing me? The one thing that had brought relief was that I was still alive. A nervous laugh went off my lips. Schoolgirls passing by exchanged anxious whispers. Enough, it was time to put an end to this. I would crawl with my grandparents the very next day. It was already dark when I found myself in front of a music club, which I occasionally visited to see the local underground bands. If daytime in Tokyo still felt as warm as in the summer, evenings were getting increasingly colder. I wrapped myself even more tightly in my denim jacket and shivered. The house was some distance from the club, so it made sense to go inside to warm up. Inside, there was a sizable crowd. Cigarette smoke hung heavy, and the air was saturated with spicy aromas of beer, sake, whiskey, and goodness knows what else. Frankly, a bender was not on my to-do list for the day, but this was too much to pass by. I got a beer from the bar and squeezed myself closer to the stage. The first band was playing some uncomplicated heavy metal. The Japanese bands playing this kind of music didn't try to reinvent the wheel. Content to blindly copy Western masters. Some managed this better than the others. The present performers managed so-so, which is why the majority of the audience were occupied with anything and everything but listening to music. The wretched rockers who couldn't possibly notice this got disheartened entirely towards the end, trying to avoid making complete fools of themselves. Then again, who was I to judge? I couldn't play my bass even at their level. The next band was dressed in the 70s style, a sure sign that some old school rock was to follow. So I went off to wander the club. Although it was coming from here time to time, I never made any acquaintances. Usually I just stood around by myself guzzling beer. It was pointless to expect international stars here. As for the local bands, I cared about them chiefly to the extent that they helped me while away another dull evening. I recalled how I once brought Xaphan here, but she didn't like it in the least. Himitsu in turn altogether refused to go to concerts for some reason. A young couple was cuddling in the corner. I watched them for a long time and suddenly felt revulsion. No, that won't do, I told myself. This night, at least, I was going to relax. I dashed to the bar, downed 3 shots of whiskey, picked up another beer, and headed back into the crowd. This time at a far less steady gait. The old farts had finished playing and the stage was now occupied by some glam rockers, tuning their instruments. "Come on, let's get rocking," I yelled. A guy standing near me glanced my way and said, "We gotta rock alright, don't you worry." "What are you playing to or what?" "Sure thing, bro." "Then why aren't you on the stage? They're all busy tuning." "I don't need any tuning, I am always tuned." He adjusted his sunglasses. If I had glasses, why was he wearing them indoors? "See?" Some guy. With this, the guy disappeared in the dressing room. The lights dimmed and the speakers erupted from the first guitar chords. "Hi everybody, we are Z Feel Z." A familiar voice came over the microphone as bright lights beamed down from the rafters. "Hey, it's Ellie!" Standing center stage in a rather unusual outfit was Ellie with a guitar in hand. Not just standing, but singing and playing. Now this, I was not ready for. I said out loud, but no one could hear me over the thundering music. Yesterday's episode in the old music classroom came right back to me. Had the money driven her bonkers? I could understand a little strumming on the side, but this here? I listened more intently. They did play quite well, no wonder they'd been asked to headline. The crowd clearly took well on the music too. As the first song ended,
Again on the stage, watching all the lights die.
it's very hard to talk with a voice in my head. As the first song ended, Ellie shouted "thank you" into the mic and surveyed the audience, lingering on me for a second. Did she spot me? Judging by the surprise and even a tad of embarrassment painted on her face, she did. So what? Did she really expect that no one was going to find out about her nighttime metamorphosis from an exemplary student and a genteel lady into a Queen of Tokyo glam scene? I chuckled. "Have you fallen from her? Where did you come from?" That weird kid who played the keyboard for Z Feel Z was standing next to me again. "You were just up on stage. She's going to take some effort." Look, I had no such... We just go to the same school and sort of know each other. Oh, is that so? His eyes flash from behind the sunglasses. What kind of dumb name is that anyway? Z-Feel. It's pronounced Zed-Feels. Oh. Zed-Feels. It's pronounced Zed-Feels, like the anime robot, you know? I looked at him skeptically. It's to attract fans. If the jam-packed club floor was any indication, it did not lack for fans, at least not at this level. The crowd was getting lively in anticipation of the next song. An instant later, the guy I'd been talking to was back on the stage behind his instrument. They were playing some kind of a ballad. Ellie kept shooting angry glances towards my direction. But of course, I just came here so I could distract her from her performance. Be that as that may, she did have a sweet voice and played well too. Maybe she had a gift, but even so, to get this far, with all her other obligations and responsibilities as a scion of respected family, time is finite after all. I had no obligations, no responsibilities, and yet all I had learned to play were 2 or 3 songs from tabs. I suddenly felt a surge of respect for Ellie and backed away from the stage so as not to embarrass her further. I backed up against the wall where she could not see me. She doesn't do as well without you. Anger imparts strength. What the devil? You're playing right now, as in this very moment. This very moment? It's a solo. This kid was starting to get to me, so I went back to staring at the stage. Jesus Christ, why does he keep walking off the stage? Seeing Ellie, mishit the string. Seeing me, Ellie mishit the strings and a metal clanging sound roiled the speakers. Were her fans and servants going to lynch me now? But the girl quickly recovered and carried on playing as though nothing had happened. But once the song ended, and before me the next one began, Ellie furtively shook her finger at me from the stage. Now that was just ridiculous. How was this my fault? Was she fixated or what? I made a point of not looking at her, training my attention on the other members of Zed Feels. The bassist looked reasonably ordinary, almost to a fault. Considering the band's style, I would have expected an edgier attire. Nevertheless, he was a much better player than me. How long would it have taken me to be able to play his parts as neatly as he did? I couldn't make out the drummer's features behind his equipment, and unfortunately, I already met the keyboardist. This turned out to be their last song. The audience was demanding an encore, but the band quickly disappeared off set. Maybe they didn't have an extensive repertoire. And what was I going to do next? On the other hand, I wanted to talk to Ellie and tell her that I liked her music. On the other hand, wouldn't that sound like a trite compliment? Besides, she was clearly not happy to see me at her concert. While I contemplated, the crowd began to disperse, and still, Zed Feels had not emerged from the dressing room. They must have left through the back door. Oh well, I didn't have much to say to her anyway. Still, I was grateful to Ellie. Her music allowed me to escape my problems, if only briefly. The club was almost empty now, but I remained frozen in the middle of the dance floor, immersed in my own thoughts. Usually, I left before the end of a concert feeling uplifted instead of waiting for the bitter aftertaste of the fun's conclusion. I remember going to concerts. Now I have too much anxiety to go outside. Either it had gotten warmer outside or the alcohol was warming me up. Somehow, I made it to the house in no time at all, stumbling about. Another note from Himitsu was resting on the doorstep. Admittedly, this time she could have let herself in with her key since I had bolted the door from the inside. She could have made dinner and waited for me as she had done the day before. However, the note made it clear that I couldn't even begin to count on it. What? Did she think that I was just amusing myself? The note, the mysteries, the man shadowing me. Just because I couldn't tell her about all this stuff didn't mean I didn't want to. So I went to the concert, what of it? A man had to enjoy some culture once in a while. Of course, none of this was Himitsu's fault. I was just weary of her incessant, misplaced worrying.
Of late, I felt caged up when I was with her and more often. As children grow, they gain independence, but in my case, Himitsu has essentially replaced my deceased parents, and little has actually changed in my life. But to take all this for granted, did I really feel no gratitude towards her? Judging by the note, she was not just upset, but also hurt. Perhaps I could at least call her. I didn't need to give any details, just tell her that everything was okay. I could, of course, stop by her place, but it was already late. I reeked of alcohol, and the call would be sufficient for the occasion. I dialed the phone number familiar to me from childhood. Almost immediately, her voice came over the line.
Hello, Nico-kun?
Just about what I'd expected. Hi, sorry that I disappeared today. Silence on the other end. You're not gonna believe me if I tell you I had things to do, are you?
Did you?
I sighed heavily.
I'm hurt that you were hiding something from me.
Even if I am, there are good reasons for it. But I'm not hiding anything. Aha! The inane laugh was meant to diffuse the situation.
You know that I'm always here for you if anything happens.
Okay, I'll see you at school tomorrow.
Good night.
Good night. I hung up and paused to think. What if I told her everything? I highly doubted that Himitsu could help me in any way, but at least I wouldn't have to shoulder my problems alone. I was gazing at the phone and was just about to head to bed when it rang. Himitsu again? Forgot to say something? It's the Russian. Yeah, hi. I started out automatically. Seriously, who else was going to call me at that hour? Who else was going to call me, period? Nikolai-kun. However, I was wrong. The speaker was Ichinose-san. Ichinose-san, I'm listening. Nikolai-kun, I considered for a long time whether to call you after all. I told myself this morning to stay out of this business, but I owe much to your father. You see, since he's no longer with us, the least I can do is to repay the debt to his son. I simply didn't know what to say. Are you listening to me? Yeah, absolutely, I'm all ears. I don't know all that much myself, nor did your father, I suspect. But there is a person, write this down, no better, memorize it. Name is Akira Shinji. He used to work with your father and me, but he got laid off. He now owns a little restaurant somewhere on the waterfront. Ichinose fell silent for a moment, but then continued hastily. Nikolai, I don't know if you're in any danger, but please be careful. Ichinose-san. Which waterfront exactly? Tokyo has many of them. The name is pretty common too. I can't. I have to go. Take care of yourself. He hung up. He was clearly afraid of something. Afraid, yes, yet he called and warned me. And even gave me a clue. Through Akira Shinji was like Ivan Ivanov or John Smith. For some reason I felt no fear at that moment. More like wild excitement and boldness. Probably owing to the quantity of alcohol consumed earlier. Literally, the moment I got off the call with Ichinose, I felt incredibly sleepy. I barely made it to my bed before falling asleep. (10th of the 9th, 1987). Okay, so we still got that going. Okay, I've been recording for about 3 hours now. I don't know how much is left, so I'm very sorry if the next episode is going to be like 20 minutes. But I'm going to leave this here only because my throat is getting fucked. So I guess remember to like, subscribe, comment, click on that notification button. I'll see all of you beautiful people in the next video. Bye bye.